Hello everybody. How are you guys doing? Salam alaikum. So, we have a lot of stories to get to. We have a lot of things to discuss and discover. Where to begin? We should have a draw, right? We'll begin lightly, of course. We'll begin lightly. We have to ease our way. We have to ease our way into the atrocities, the war crimes, etc. Right? Gently. We'll start slow with some war crimes, assassination, then we'll get to, crimes against humanity. You know what I hate about the news? Well, a lot of things, but the worst thing is this pulsing music, this suspenseful music they have before the broadcast starts to stress the fuck out of you, right? Like the BBC, like, bop, bop, bop. Shit. Like, you don't need it. The news by itself is bad enough. You don't need that, right? Just conditioning. This isn't some like tinfoil hat bullshit. This is real. Like this is, you can go look at the psychological impact that this has on not just human beings, but this sort of conditioning is not good, man. And it does play a certain role. Although again, as I said, the news itself is bad enough without the music, so no need for that. Anyway, one of you over here in the comments said, I think it was Javi, says, I didn't realize how many emojis I have until recently, and they're all shoes, right? Shoes in politics. I catch your drift. In any case, speaking of shoes, Mike Pompeo deserves a shoe, so we'll start with him. Okay, let's have a look then, shall we? So, I don't know how many of you have heard of this already, but we're going to go through it, right? We're going to go through it because as soon as I heard about this, I knew that I have to cover this with you guys, and indeed we already have, but nevertheless. Mike Pompeo, it turns out. Okay, no. Before we get to Mike Pompeo, let's start again. Okay, let's start again because I will save his reaction for the end. Okay. Yahoo News reported on a CIA plot, right, which they were discussing, which involved assassinating and or kidnapping Julian Assange. Now, I hate to say this because it kind of indicates how dire the situation is, but we're not surprised. We already knew this, right? We knew from the UC Global employees or former employees who are testifying in Spain in the court case that is unfolding over there. When I was in court at the Old Bailey, on one of the days we had their testimony. So we don't know their identities. It's been kept anonymous, but you have a few former employees of this Spanish company, UC Global, who discussed this. And now we have confirmation from other US officials. Dozens, in fact. So this is the story I'm talking about. It was published on September 26th in Yahoo News. It's titled Kidnapping, Assassination, and a London Shootout Inside the CIA's Secret War Plans Against WikiLeaks. Now, I must warn you, it's a very long read. Very interesting read, but a very long read. So you must take the time to sit down and go through it on your own peacefully. But I will cover some of the main points in this fine piece of journalism over here. And one of them, for example, is not just the targeting of Julian Assange himself, the founder of WikiLeaks, who's who's the target of a political witch hunt, but other people in WikiLeaks, right? So they talk about in this article how they targeted other people in WikiLeaks, right? And this involves breaking into their apartments, stealing their possessions, their documents, specifically copies of the Vault 7 leak. So maybe you recall Vault 7, these were published by WikiLeaks in 2017, and they involve all manners of, CIA documents regarding their tech capabilities, how many zero-day exploits they're hoarding, which enable them to access, to exploit security vulnerabilities on, mobile phones, operating systems. So the CIA, they have a team who find them and hoard them and then use them when necessary to, hack people's phones or devices. And then, of course, It's very interesting. You can see how they're going and installing malware on other agencies. It's really, really exceptional. And so, I'm just going to read you a passage here from the article, right? While Assange had been on the radar of U.S. intelligence agencies for years, these plans for an all-out war against him were sparked by WikiLeaks' ongoing publication of extraordinarily sensitive CIA hacking tools known collectively as Vault 7, which the agency ultimately concluded represented the largest data loss in CIA history. President Trump's newly installed CIA director, Mike Pompeo, was seeking revenge on WikiLeaks and Assange, who had sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy since 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden on rape allegations he denied. Again, I don't, they're just throwing in the rape thing again, and I feel compelled to point this out because a lot of people still don't understand this. There were never any rape charges in Sweden. There were only allegations, and that's a whole other scandal in of itself, right? Character assassination, trying to smear Assange. But I'm just going to continue to the next sentence here, and they say, Pompeo and other top agency leaders were completely detached from reality because they were so embarrassed about Vault 7, said a former Trump national security official. They were seeing blood, right? And they say that the CIA's fury at WikiLeaks led Pompeo to publicly describe the group in 2017 as a quote-unquote non-state hostile intelligence service, right? And so this is a phrase, this is a term that they concocted, that they coined, that they came up with, that they invented for the sole purpose of targeting WikiLeaks and painting them as a malign actor, as an enemy, and so forth, right? And it's because of the Vault 7 things. But what's very interesting, just to underscore this point, you can see that they're not just going after Assange, they're going after the organization itself. That's the point here, right? And trying to paint it as something, otherly. And look, this is also very interesting. Pay attention. So, among the journalists some U.S. officials wanted to designate as quote-unquote information brokers were Glenn Greenwald, then a columnist for The Guardian, and Laura Poitras, a documentary filmmaker who had both been instrumental in publishing documents provided by Snowden, right? So these former officials are saying, is WikiLeaks a journalistic outlet? Are Laura and Glenn truly journalists? We tried to change the definition of them, and I preached this to the White House and got rejected. So this is in the Obama days, right? And they talk about how, there was sort of a split here where Obama didn't want to go too far and prosecute WikiLeaks because that would implicate the New York Times and so forth. But then Trump comes in and he's all for it. Now, I do want to point out something interesting that is also in this article. When they talk about kidnapping Assange or killing him, right? It's insane. Here they say, at meetings between senior Trump administration officials after WikiLeaks started publishing the Vault 7 materials, Pompeo began discussing kidnapping Assange, according to 4 former officials. While the notion of kidnapping Assange preceded Pompeo's arrival at Langley, the new director championed the proposals, according to former officials. This is a very interesting phrase. This is a very interesting sentence. So they're saying that Pompeo didn't come up with this, which is, shocking enough. So they were discussing kidnapping him before Pompeo arrived. That's quite, it's a little vague, but it's also not that hard to imagine which officials we're talking about, right? Given the time frame in which Vault 7 was released and WikiLeaks activities and publications. So, of course, they go into several different ideas that they had. One is leaving we talked about this. UC Global talked about this, how they had an idea of leaving the door open, maybe by accident, right? So letting the U.S. come in. And, this is absolutely hilarious, this line over here. Look at this. They say such actions were sure to create a diplomatic and political firestorm, as they would have involved violating the sanctity of the Ecuadorian embassy before kidnapping the citizen of a critical U.S. partner, Australia, in the capital of the United Kingdom, the United States' closest ally. Trying to seize Assange from an embassy in the British capital struck some as ridiculous, said the former intelligence official. This isn't Pakistan or Egypt. We're talking about London. Right? I like that little phrase, how, fuck everyone else. We can go and create havoc and kidnap people and assassinate people in those countries, but not here. This is a white country. We don't do that over here. That's really hilarious, right? Like, that's just incredible. So, in any case, this is a very long article, but it really confirms once again what we already knew from the UC Global employees. And in response to this article, look at what Mike Pompeo had to say, right? So he's on Glenn Beck's radio show. This is a video. I'm going to play it to you, okay?
I want to talk to you about redistricting, but I have to ask you a question on a story that broke yesterday from Michael Isikoff, so take it for what it's worth, that says that the gist of the article, you were so obsessed with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that you and the president were looking at really aggressive methods, including kidnapping or an assassination. One scenario included a possible shootout with Russian agents who you believed were going to try to get Assange for themselves.
Glenn, I've seen the piece. I knew they were writing on this thing. I'd say three things. First of all, it's Isikoff. We've seen he was a big Russia hoax perpetrator.
Yep, he was.
Yeah. So take that for what it's worth. Second, there are many stories out there now about how the president and I were engaged in things that were crazy, right? There's this talk about that there was an effort to drop a nuclear weapon on China in the last week's administration. This story is of that same ilk, right? I couldn't tell you who they have as their sources, but those sources didn't know what we were doing. And then the third point, I guess, Glenn, is we were very worried about the fact that we had bad actors who were stealing really, really sensitive material from the United States. And I make no apologies for the fact that we and the administration were working diligently to make sure that we were able to protect this important sensitive information from whether it was cyber actors in Russia or the Chinese military or anyone who was trying to take this information away from us. Not just commercial stuff like intellectual property theft, but real national security secrets. And so we were working hard to go after those bad actors who were trying to do that.
So was Assange and WikiLeaks, are they journalists in a media outlet or a hostile intelligence entity?
So I came to believe that they were, in fact, one of the first non-state hostile intelligence entities. They weren't engaged in even crappy reporting like Isikoff does. They were engaged in active efforts to steal secrets themselves and pay others to do the same in a way that violated both the central understandings that I think the American people get, and second, violated U.S. law as well. We were always careful. I'm all about a big, bold, strong First Amendment, but these folks were acting in ways that were deeply inconsistent with that.
Well. That's not all Pompeo had to say. That's not all he had to say. I want to show you something else over here. Okay? So this appeared 4 days later after the initial story broke in Yahoo News. Again in Yahoo, they say, Pompeo, sources for Yahoo News WikiLeaks report should all be prosecuted. So, former CIA director and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Wednesday called for the criminal prosecution of sources who spoke to Yahoo News for a story detailing proposals by the intelligence agency in 2017 to abduct WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange and discussions within the Trump administration and CIA to possibly even assassinate him. Pompeo, appearing on Megyn Kelly's podcast, was asked to respond to the Yahoo News story, which was based on interviews with 30 former U.S. intelligence and national security officials with knowledge of the U.S. government's efforts against WikiLeaks. Quote, I can't say much about this other than whoever those 30 people who allegedly spoke to one of these Yahoo News reporters, they should all be prosecuted for speaking about classified activity inside the Central Intelligence Agency. Well, I'll tell you why this is interesting. What Mike Pompeo has done here, he's essentially admitted inadvertently that the story is true. If it wasn't true, why would he call for these sources to be prosecuted? You want to prosecute intelligence officials for making something up, for something that isn't true? It is true. There were plans, or at least discussions around plans to kidnap or assassinate Julian Assange. This is true. And that's why Mike Pompeo is saying that these people should be prosecuted. I mean, we didn't need Mike Pompeo specifically to come out and confirm it, but it is quite, it is quite remarkable indeed. So we have the UC Global former employees who confirm this, dozens of U.S. officials, and we know, usually that on its own, we know from Russiagate and all sorts of things, when they say unnamed U.S. intelligence officials, you shouldn't take that at face value. But again, we already had testimony in court. I heard it in person from the UC Global employees. Their statement was submitted and read out. And now Mike Pompeo himself is confirming it. So you have three different sources confirming this publicly. Well, yeah, and so... two publicly went through the investigation, the investigative story, and of course it's true, But what I want to say here, because I think this is a very important distinction to make, is that even though it's true, the CIA, the officials at the highest level of government in the U.S. were discussing kidnapping Assange or killing Assange, even though this is true, you have to understand that what Assange is going through right now is the same thing. There still is a plan to kill Assange. There still is a plan in action to, torture him psychologically, physically. And that's what the process is about, right? When we talk about the process being the punishment, that's what it is. Being persecuted for a decade, arbitrary detention, 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, can't go out, can't see a doctor, can't travel, can't move, no sunlight, can't go outside. 2 years now on remand in Belmarsh prison. You don't think that kills someone? I mean, we heard the medical testimony in the court. We heard all these doctors one by one, neuropsychiatrists. There was also another doctor, so not just psychologists, psychiatrists, but also physicians who talked about how Assange's health deteriorated. He couldn't even go see a dentist because of his tooth. The risk of infection, many things that would naturally occur to anyone being cooped up in such a small space, confined to such a small area for so long. And of course, we know about the conditions in Belmarsh, right? That are driving someone to near suicide, and being denied winter clothes, all these things, right? We could stay here all night going through this list. My point is that this plan is still in place to kill him, and if they're successful with the extradition, he will off himself, right? We know that this is a real risk, and that's why the judge blocked the extradition, because it is a real risk. And so it's very naive to say that, this was just hypothetical. No, they're still killing him effectively every day. They're killing him bit by bit. So you must understand this. You must grasp this. And I think this is a very important thing to note, because otherwise, you're giving them a pass. You're giving them a pass to say, oh, that was just hypothetical. You can't prove that. Yeah, but we can prove this. We know that this is real. Both of them are true, but we can see ostensibly, we can see very clearly that Assange is not well, right? He shouldn't be in a jail, never mind a maximum security jail, and they're killing him slowly. This is a fact. This is a fact. So I guess some of you may have seen the story before, but nevertheless, I wanted to touch on it because it's very important. And despite Mike Pompeo's efforts to bury it, it's real. It's real. Okay, so let's talk about this over here. Give me a second. Oh, by the way, I see we have some tips. Thank you very much. Let me just read your comments for you. This is from Austin. It says, I'm sick of the CIA continuing to commit crimes with impunity. Abolish the CIA. How do I smash the like button on your comment? Florin has sent a sticker. Thank you very much, Florin. And we have something again from Austin. Thank you, Austin. Says, free Assange, abolish the CIA. Again, I wish we could like a super chat. I think there's something like that being developed. I'm not sure. I saw something in the YouTube settings, but I can't access it yet, apparently. Florin as well. Thank you for the other sticker. You guys are great. Austin and Florin. Big up to you guys. I don't know if anyone else has sent any donations or something, but I'll try and read them whether it's on PayPal or whatever. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and I'll do that. So I just want to move on to the next topic over here. So I'm sure you guys heard about this one. Excuse me. This is good. This is very good. The Pandora Papers. So I'm sure you guys have heard about this, right? It's the biggest financial leak in history. Let's take a look. This is a headline from The Guardian. Pandora Papers, biggest ever leak of offshore data, exposes financial secrets of rich and powerful. Millions of documents reveal offshore deals and assets of more than 100 billionaires, 30 world leaders, and 300 public officials. Fascinating, right? So you guys may recall we had the Panama Papers a few years ago, and then the Paradise Papers, and now they have the Pandora Papers. Great naming scheme, right? So in any case, let's take a look at this. Because if you go down and look at these reports that they've done, because you must understand this is a collaborative effort. It's not just The Guardian. It's many journalistic outlets that have collaborated together. And you can see here, they're saying it's perhaps the most significant offshore leak to date was the 2016 Panama Papers, which I just mentioned, right? Then with the Paradise Papers and now the Pandora Papers. These are 2.94 terabytes. Okay, they're the largest of the three. And say the files also come from a much wider array of offshore providers than previous leaks, 14 in total. Locations range from Vietnam to Belize and Singapore and to far-flung archipelagos such as the Bahamas and the Seychelles. So what's really interesting about this, because they mentioned multiple world leaders, right? Like the King of Jordan, President of Azerbaijan. What really stuck out to me immediately, and this is lovely. Are you ready? Are you ready? Not everyone named in the Pandora Papers is accused of wrongdoing. The leaked files reveal that Tony and Sherry Blair saved £312,000 in property taxes when they purchased a London building partially owned by the family of a prominent Bahraini minister. So this is what I love. I really love this. Right before Tony Blair, you have a disclaimer. Right? Not the Azerbaijani president or anyone else, just Tony Blair. It's like, listen, guys, we know Tony Blair is named to this, but he's a good guy. He's a saint. He didn't do anything wrong, okay? He just happens to be in this trove of data. He didn't do anything wrong. I love it. I love it. This is so emblematic of what British media is, right? Just kissing Tony Blair's ass. All of them to this day, right? So I love that. That's really good. Here's another thing that stuck out to me, like a sore thumb. If we go on the website of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, right? Because they've worked on this on these Pandora Papers. If we scroll down over here, okay, look what they say. This is on their website, right? They say, where are the 336 politicians in the Pandora Papers from? And you look at this heat map, and oh, that's funny. There's nothing in the United States. Nothing. Not one politician. You're telling me this is the biggest leak in history of offshore data. It's an enormous financial leak. And you didn't find one corrupt politician in the United States, the financial capital of the world? I mean, you have to be a sucker to believe this. You have to be a moron. The United States is more corrupt than everything put together. What are you talking? It's the financial capital of the planet. You didn't find one corrupt politician from the US. One, not one. Oh, this is really good. This is really good. Here's the next thing that stuck out to me, man. Are you ready? I'm sure as you guys were staring at the beautiful graphics of the Pandora Papers, you notice some of these world leaders. They've kindly put Mr. Blair over here on the left. But who is the biggest? Who has the biggest photograph on the front cover of the Pandora Papers? Why, it's Mr. Putin. Of course, no scandal is complete without a little bit of Russian in there, right? You can't have a scandal without Russia. There has to be some anti-Russian bias in there, right? So let's take a look. How is Mr. Putin, the Russian president, involved in this? Are you ready? Are you ready about this? Okay, let's take a look. The Russian president, Vladimir Putin, whom the United States suspects of having a secret fortune, does not appear in the files by name. Let me repeat that. Does not appear in the files by name. But numerous close associates do, including his best friend from childhood, the late Peter Kolbin, whom critics have called a quote-unquote wallet for Putin's own wealth, and a woman the Russian leader was allegedly once romantically involved with. None responded to invitations to comment. So that's great, right? Putin is not named in it. So they stuck his face on the front cover anyway, and they made it the biggest one. The biggest fucking face. Look at this. He's not even named in it, and they put his face on the front cover anyway. Oh, they're so lame. Oh my god. A childhood friend. Dude, I don't even remember who the fuck I went to school with when I was, you know, like, who remembers this shit? What does that do? That doesn't prove anything. Oh my god, that is really stupid. This is so transparent. Look, I want to be honest here. I want to be honest, okay? I'm not trying to diss any of the reporters. I'm not accusing them of being like, you know, CIA agents or something. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is really grasping at straws. I mean, you could have said that without plastering his face on the front cover. It doesn't make any sense, right? I don't understand what the point of that is. You know, you could have put the disclaimer that you put before Tony Blair's name over there, no? It's just a suggestion. You could have put it before the Azerbaijani president, perhaps, no? I don't know. Because, you know, putting it before Blair, who's named in it, and Putin, who's not named in it, he gets a full portrait on the front cover. You know, it's a bit odd. It's a bit suspicious. And I want to say one more thing, because, you know, the Pandora papers, what this is, they're trying to copy what WikiLeaks did. Yeah, WikiLeaks really pioneered this international, collaborative, investigative journalism. They really pioneered that. Yep. And ever since, you've had tons of people, not just with the Pandora papers, tons of projects trying to copy that, right? And the difference is, and I think Stefania Morizzi pointed this out very eloquently, is that people who are detractors of WikiLeaks, instead of talking about the material, they just come and they attack the journalists working as media partners with WikiLeaks, or attack WikiLeaks itself and say, oh, you're all Russian agents. And, you know, because they can't discredit the files because the files are 100% genuine. So they resort to ad hominem attacks, right? Smear campaigns. They accuse them of being Russian agents. No one is doing that here, you know? No one is doing that here. People have their disagreements, but they don't go and jump and say, oh, you're a CIA agent because you said something bad about Putin. You see the difference? You see the difference here? It's very important to note that. And once again, it's also important to note that the way that you can submit documents as a source, this was pioneered by WikiLeaks, this anonymous drop type system, and these enormous collaborative investigative projects. This is also pioneered by WikiLeaks. And, you know, they do get credit for it, but not enough credit. Along with the credit comes a lot of demonization, which is very unjust and uncalled for, and completely, you know, unfounded. So I wanted to say that as well. And, you know, I just wanted to point out a few things about these Pandora papers that stuck out to me. That's all. Now, I'm not saying this because I don't know if it's true, but I've seen people suggesting that this is part of a trend of not leaks, but hacks. I don't know if that's true. I'm not well versed enough in that particular avenue of this topic to comment on it. But I've seen people saying that. I mean, even if it is, I don't know who's behind that, who's doing the hacking. But once again, you can look back on WikiLeaks, for example, the DNC stuff, or, you know, Hillary Clinton emails. They always said that they were hacked, and they weren't. right? So you have a lot more loaded charges. You have a lot more unfair accusations leveled against WikiLeaks, lobbed at WikiLeaks. And, when it comes to things that are focused on other world leaders or other parts of the world, no one even asks these questions. It's just taken at face value. Just an interesting observation I wanted to share with you. So, okay. You guys need to give me a second so I can drink something, so I can hydrate before we move on to the next topic. By the way, hey, this is great. I didn't have to badger you guys to. we have 173 viewers and 161 likes, almost 1-to-1, right? So, whoever among you who has not hit the like button yet, beware. No, I'm just kidding. Just hit the like. And again, you know the whole rap about fighting the algorithm and everything. I don't have to repeat this. You guys are intelligent. You know what I'm talking about. So, okay, I'm just going to drink something very quickly, and then we can move on to the next topic. If you guys have any questions or donations, go ahead and shoot, and I will read them out. I'll read them out for you or answer them according to depending on what they are. Okay. So, l'agenda du jour. Let's go to our main topic. The Facebook whistleblower. Perhaps most of you have already heard of this story. Former employee of Facebook, worked there for 2 years. Has come out and blasted Facebook for many reasons. I'm just going to play you a short clip from CNBC where they'll recap the situation, and then we'll dive right into it. Shall we?
Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. My name is Frances Haugen. I used to work at Facebook. I joined Facebook because I think Facebook has the potential to bring out the best in us. But I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy. The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people. Congressional action is needed. They won't solve this crisis without your help.
Okay, so what she's done effectively, she leaked a trove of files, internal Facebook documents, research, and more to the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal, they want you to go subscribe before you can even read any of it, so you have to take their word if you don't have a subscription. But what's very interesting about this is that her testimony, because as you can just see, she testified in Congress, is being used for much more nefarious ends. I'll just play you another clip over here from, because she's been receiving tons of media attention. She's everywhere, 60 Minutes, CNN, you name it. Some of the topics mentioned there, right? They say that Facebook is promoting hateful content because it's more engaging. So allegedly, because things that make people angry, things that are controversial, they draw clicks, they draw engagement, they draw users to the platform, and they keep users on the site longer. So that's what she's saying. And she's saying that Facebook knows this and willingly did nothing on purpose to, keep ad revenue going, to keep user engagement and growth continuing. And so other things she's mentioning, Instagram, for example, as many of you know, Facebook bought Instagram, Facebook bought WhatsApp. And she's also saying that Facebook knows that Instagram is damaging for women because of, it makes them feel insecure about their bodies and things like that. And while the things she's saying are perhaps not entirely untrue, I want to point you to a brilliant piece over here from Glenn Greenwald. Okay, so you should go read the whole thing, because we're just going to read parts of it here for time's sake. But it's a brilliant piece, and I want to read you something from that which addresses these things. Okay, so the title is "Democrats and Media Do Not Want to Weaken Facebook, Just Commandeer Its Power to Censor." Okay, and then the subtitle is "Whistleblower Frances Haugen is a vital media and political asset because she advances their quest for greater control over online political discourse." And so, the social media giant, meaning Facebook, hurts America and the world, this narrative maintains, by permitting misinformation to spread, presumably more so than cable outlets and mainstream newspapers do virtually every week. Fostering body image neurosis in young girls through Instagram, presumably more so than fashion magazines, Hollywood, and the music industry do with their glorification of young and perfectly sculpted bodies. Promoting polarizing political content in order to keep the citizenry enraged, balkanized, and resentful, and therefore more eager to stay engaged, presumably in contrast to corporate media outlets, which would never do such a thing. And worst of all, by failing to succinctly censor political content that contradicts liberal orthodoxies and diverges from decreed liberal truth. On Tuesday, Haugen's star turn took her to Washington, where she spent the day testifying before the Senate about Facebook's dangerous refusal to censor even more content and ban even more users than they already do. So these are excellent points. I mean, there's no question about it. If you want to talk about these issues, and they're perfectly reasonable and important issues to bring up, what about the other places that promote these things even more? Right? So if we're going to talk about, for example, how Facebook helps spread misinformation, are you really going to sit there and say that cable outlets and mainstream newspapers don't do that? When the Iraq War was about to begin, back in late 2002, although they were planning for this since 2001, but in the build-up to the Iraq War, 2002, 2003, there was no Facebook. There was no social media. That didn't exist. Every single news network, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Sky News, CNN, Fox News, you name it, the New York Times, Washington Post, every single day. Anthrax letters. Oh my God, Saddam is sending anthrax letters to members of Congress. Oh my God, we found his secret signature molecule in the anthrax. It's 100% Saddam. Oh my God, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. No, he doesn't have weapons. He's giving them to Al-Qaeda too. Al-Qaeda will have weapons of mass destruction. Who is spreading this misinformation that led to the death of 1 million Iraqis, million more refugees? You could also add the deaths in Syria because it spilled over into Syria with ISIS. That's not misinformation. I think calling it misinformation is actually an understatement. I think it's being too kind. There was a Facebook back then. That doesn't absolve Facebook, right? 100%. It's not exactly the most ethical company in the world for other reasons, which we'll get to. But you're going to come here and tell me that cable news don't lie? What have they been doing for the last years about Russiagate? Lying through their goddamn teeth day in, day out, this whole McCarthyite bullshit again. Are you're seriously going to sit there and say that Facebook is the number one source of misinformation? If you really care about misinformation, Facebook is not your number one worry. It might be a worry, but it's not your number one worry, right? It's not the reason that there was a capital riot. Like, they want to blame all the ills of the world on everything but themselves. And as Glenn points out in the article, which is, 100% right on the money, this is about 2016, right? Hillary Clinton, she loses the election, and the liberals, what do? Instead of looking inwards, self-evaluation, self-criticism, they just attack anything you can imagine, right? It's everyone else. Everyone else is to blame except Hillary. Everyone else is to blame except the liberal mentality and orthodoxies. Everyone else is to blame except the Democratic Party. It's Russia. It's Facebook. It's everyone. You posted a meme? Oh my God, you're working for Vladimir Putin. Like, it's fucking bananas. Insane shit. And so in their crusade, in their quest to censor any opinion that runs counter to what they believe in their quest for dominance, now that they control the executive, again, not just the White House, they control also Congress, both chambers of Congress. This is what they want to do now with this Facebook scandal. They don't give a shit about what Facebook does to teenagers or to people in general about their self-image, their body dysmorphia, whatever. They don't care about mental health or anyone's mental health. They care about using Facebook and using this scandal to their advantage. What does that mean? That means censoring opinions they don't like. Okay? So this is, come on, man. This is a textbook case of a government exploiting a crisis to do things that it wouldn't normally be able to get away with. Right? So Facebook is already banning so many people. Instagram already banning so many people. And we'll get to that in a second. But, if you're concerned about misinformation, look at the corporate press. If you are seriously going to sit there and tell me Facebook, which again, Facebook is not perfect, but if you think Facebook is more dangerous in regards to misinformation than the corporate mainstream media, you're a liar. You are either an idiot or a liar, because this is empirically untrue. Okay, so the next point, right? Fostering body image neurosis with Instagram, right? The mental health issues, yeah, this is real. Like, we're not going to deny that, that could have an impact on mental health. No one is saying that's not true. But how is that worse than what you see in Hollywood? How is that worse than what you see in fashion magazines? Like, you walk outside and you see it in billboards. You see it like in posters. It's on television. You can't escape that. That's way more widespread and damaging, So once again, if you're really concerned about that, you would look at that industry, right? No? Just logically speaking, if you're concerned about the damage and you want to assess which one is causing the most, like which is the primary culprit. Hollywood, music industry, right? Fashion magazines. And promoting polarizing political content, right? In order to keep the citizenry enraged, balkanized, and resentful. Again, corporate media outlets. It's so good in the United States that they've managed to brainwash people into thinking they have two parties when it's like one party with two wings, right? That's how good they are at it, at keeping people enraged, and this tribal mentality, this toxic crap, right? They act as if Democrats and Republicans are better, one is better than the other. It's the same regime. It's the same corporations. It's one party with two wings, right? And my point is that even within that paradigm, they managed to make people think that, it's a two-sided thing, and it's incredible what you can do with television and radio. Their efforts, their abilities to divide the citizenry, to create, just as an example, with Russiagate, if you look at people like Rachel Maddow, if you look at Joy Reid, all these people in general who promoted this Russiagate crap, what happened now that Trump is not in office anymore? Their ratings are plummeting, right? They have no viewers left. So they were purposely, knowingly creating deceitful, angering content. They're lying, very, very plainly put. They were lying to keep people divided, to drive up ratings, to draw viewers. So again, that's permeated much more than Facebook could be. So if you're concerned about that, why aren't you looking towards cable news? You know why? Because the people who are making these critics are in cable news. It is the corporate media who's saying this shit. So of course they're not going to criticize themselves. They're the ones who are doing the same thing, and albeit to a much higher degree, right? And so just going back to this over here, this interview. I just want to play you a bit more from what she's from Facebook. It would be nice if they celebrated whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning, Daniel Hale, who exposed murder, right? Who exposed state crimes, extrajudicial killings, mass murder, assassination, right? I'd love to see this kind of praise for them. I would love that. But they only celebrate whistleblowers when they align with their political objectives and orthodoxies. And so I just want to show you something else over here. This is again from Glenn Greenwald. He says, agitating for more online censorship has been a leading priority for the Democratic Party ever since they blamed social media platforms, along with WikiLeaks, Russia, Jill Stein, James Comey, the New York Times, and Bernie Bros for the 2016 defeat of their rightful heir to the White House throne, Hillary Clinton. And this craving for censorship has been elevated into an even more urgent priority for their corporate media allies, due to the same belief that Facebook helped elect Trump, but also because free speech on social media prevents them from maintaining a stranglehold on the flow of information by allowing ordinary, uncredentialed serfs to challenge, question, and dispute their decrees, or build a large audience that they cannot control. Destroying alternatives to their failing platforms is thus a means of self-preservation. Realizing that they cannot convince audiences to trust their work or pay attention to it, they seek instead to create captive audiences by destroying, or at least controlling, any competitors to their pieties. This is 100% true as well, right? So, you have a lot of people who are growing successful in independent media. Alhamdulillah. You have a lot of alternative platforms that are growing. Substack is one of them. Rockfin is one of them. Rumble is one of them. Shout out to everyone who's watching on Rockfin. So, you have a lot of other places that are popping up to circumvent this big tech censorship, Silicon Valley censorship. Because when the government are pressuring these companies to censor opinions online, where are they hitting hardest? Where is the pressure coming down the heaviest? It's on Silicon Valley, companies like, Apple, Facebook, etc. And so, alternative platforms have a little more wiggle room, but that is at risk. And we'll get to that in a second, but you should really go read this article from Glenn, because he lays it out very succinctly, very eloquently, and explains how censorship has been a long-term goal now for the last, for the last years of Democrats, going back to 2016, to censor opinions online. Right? And they'll use any excuse, whether it's Trump winning the election, the Capitol riot, Hillary Clinton's emails, damaging memes on Facebook, anything they could come up with. So this is another one of those scandals that they're exploiting. So again, let's say this very simply. What the whistleblower, or so-called whistleblower, Haugen, is saying about Facebook is not necessarily untrue. The problem here is that Democrats, the government, are exploiting this scandal, or these revelations, not to improve these problems that she's talking about, but to take over Facebook and other big tech companies for their own benefit. Do you understand what's going on here? So that's a very, very important distinction and point to raise and to make. And another thing that is very important and noteworthy is that in response to all this, Facebook, what has Facebook said? Facebook said, okay, you know what? Go ahead. Enforce new restrictions for censorship or whatever, for data control, for verifying misinformation, however you want to call it, right? And we'll comply with them. And at first, you might be thinking, well, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Facebook is complying and they want to tackle this problem. No. What that means, the consequence of that, is that only Facebook and only Google and only billion-dollar tech companies will be able to comply with these regulations because they have money. They can afford to hire armies of analysts or whatever, misinformation warriors, whatever the hell that you want to call them, right? They'll be able to comply with these censorship or anti-misinformation regulations because they have the money to do it. Other smaller companies like Substack, Rockfin, whatever, Twitter even, as Glenn points out, they'd be drowned by these requests. They wouldn't be able to keep up. And so this would effectively squash any competition. So you understand why that's so important to look out for, because it doesn't sound as good as they make it sound. It's about consolidating the market. It's about crushing competition and finding themselves in a position where they're the only ones able to comply with these requests, right? So they get to pretend like, we agree with you. We want to tackle these problems. Please put in some regulations that only we are able to afford and only we are able to comply with because of our billions and billions of dollars and resources. Very practical. Now, another thing that I want to raise here, because I think this is equally important and noteworthy, when they talk about Facebook's algorithm being damaging, right, and promoting hateful content and so forth, no one is criticizing the Facebook algorithm for censoring Palestinian voices. And it's not just the Facebook algorithm, it's the Instagram algorithm as well, because it's owned by Facebook. And this is something that they're doing platform-wide, right? So you remember we looked at this together, how Palestinian groups and activists, they had their posts taken down, and trying to document crimes by the Israeli occupation. Their accounts are locked. So this is, of course, not just something that happened now. This has happened. This is happening in May, this past May, during the onslaught against Gaza. But it also dates back to before that, even. But I just want to. We looked at this together a few weeks ago. But again, I want to just highlight it again. This is, for example, from May, from Quora. Why Twitter and Instagram deleted posts related to Israel's cruelty on Palestine's people or Palestinians, right? And then here, this is from October 8th, from Human Rights Watch. They say, Facebook censors discussions of rights issues, right? So they're censoring Palestinians mostly. They say Facebook has wrongfully removed and suppressed content by Palestinians and their supporters, including human rights abuses carried out by Israelis. And then here, for example, this is from the Washington Post. They say Facebook's AI treats Palestinian activists like it treats American black activists. It blocks them. And so when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I mentioned to you, because just to be completely clear, I never experienced any of the censorship, despite the fact that I talk all the time about the Israeli occupation in Palestine. That changed. That changed a few weeks ago because they took down one of my posts. This was incredible. I didn't even say anything. I just reported that about the 6 men who escaped from Gilboa, the 6 Palestinian men. I just posted that Hamas said there will be no more prisoner exchanges without those 6 men. It's not an opinion. I'm just reporting. I'm just telling you what was said in Arabic, right? I'm just telling you the news. They took it down, right? And even reviewed it and then confirmed that it should be taken down. Which is absurd. You cannot even say the name Hamas in a crystal clear, objective, transparent report. It's one sentence, just one sentence. Hamas have said that, there will be no more prisoner exchanges without the 6 men from Gilboa. So one way or another, they're going to be free, basically, but either by escaping or through a prisoner exchange. Right? And that's mild. That's mild compared to what other Palestinian activists and journalists have experienced. That's mild. Right? So just because I didn't experience it until now doesn't mean it wasn't happening. You get my point. It was happening, all right. And it's funny because once they got caught, Instagram and Facebook said, oh no, it's a glitch. Really, it's a glitch? Like as if they don't know what the fuck they're doing with their own platform. Why don't you have a glitch that deletes pro-Israeli content? How weird, right? How fucking convenient. It was just a glitch. Out of everything that's posted on Facebook, it just happens to delete things posted by Palestinians exposing Israeli crimes. How fucking convenient. Wow, what are the odds of that? They really think we're idiots. And so magically, they fixed it, right? All of a sudden, yes, now we know what the problem is. Yeah, we'll fix that. So I don't see anyone calling that out. Of course, as I just showed you, there's a headline here and there in the Washington Post. There's a few of them, like a dozen articles or something, but there's nowhere near the same amount of coverage as there is now. So you have all of these politicians in Washington, D.C. Oh my God, we have to take action because Facebook's algorithm is so toxic. Okay, well, why didn't you give a shit? Why didn't you care when Facebook was censoring Palestinians and covering up war crimes by the Israelis? Why didn't you take action then? Where was your outrage then? Where is the outrage now? Right now, where's the outrage? They're still not even talking about that. Right? So the politicians, the media, they're only outraged about things that, they can exploit and, exposing Palestinians, exposing Israeli crimes against Palestinians or against Syria or against Lebanon. That doesn't align with their agenda. So anyway, I just wanted to do a quick recap about that. And of course, always be on the lookout how the government is using these things to advance their agenda. And of course, we saw a few weeks ago how Jem Psaki, the White House spokesperson, she admits that the White House is working with Facebook to ban people, and not just on one platform, but everywhere. They want to deplatform people everywhere. And, like it says in the article, back then, they did it with Alex Jones and other people that, no one gave a shit. And if you said something like, yo, this is bad, you shouldn't deplatform people because then it could happen to one of us. So, oh my God, are you supporting Alex Jones? Look where we are now. How many people do you know in leftist politics who've got their YouTube channel demonetized, who got their Twitter or something, taken down? A lot. It even happened to me. So this is a real thing. This is an actual problem. And the algorithm, as we know, it buries channels like ours, independent media, and favors corporate media. We know this. So this is a real issue. And just beware how they try to exploit this scandal now with Facebook and this whistleblower, to their own ends and to suit their agenda. Lovely. We have 250 people watching. Bienvenue. It's good to see you all. I see Vegan is here. Salut Vegan, ça va? Vegan, Vero. I just want to say thank you for always translating the tweets. Ça fait vraiment plaisir. Et je vois que tu m'envoies un truc là. Says, Vero says, as someone pointed out, Google and Facebook want regulations because they're the only ones who can afford to implement and therefore kill the competition. Right. So I think you must have sent that before I got to it. Absolutely right. So yeah, they're clever bastards, right? They got good lawyers. I'll admit that. They got good lawyers. Thank you for the tip, Vero. Thank you for the tip, Vero. Thank you for always translating the things. J'apprécie énormément. I'm just trying to see what else you guys sent so I don't miss anything. John Burns sent a tip, a sticker. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's very cute. Hold on, I'm just scrolling up over here so I make sure I can see all of them. We got one over here from Franchetti. It says, my mother went to prison for 8 years for having committed no real crime, but being at the head of a Marxist movement in Italy during the 70s. Even though she's a professor, she's still seen as a terrorist. That's shit. That is crap. And what does that mean exactly? Like she can't... Is it where you can't fly on a plane anymore? Like they say, oh, you're involved in some political activity, therefore you're a terrorist, and now you can't travel, or these things. I mean, this is obscene, right? This is obscene that's still in place. I'm very sorry about that. Naz says she's a plant wanting more censorship. Oh, the Haugen, Francis Haugen. Yes, now I know what you're referring to. Because I multiple topics are about to get to, and I was like, wait, which one? Oh, man. I just want to say thank you guys very much for your support. I'm very grateful. And if you have any questions, of course, or comments, please go ahead. I'm just going to set up the next thing, the next topic. So allow me a moment over here. Right. I'm just going to drink something first. Hold on. I'm just going to cover up the screen, and I'm going to drink something quickly. Okay? Thank you. Don't mind if I do. we got a tip over here from Jackie on PayPal. Thank you very much, Jackie. I appreciate that. I don't see a note or a comment or a question, but thank you nonetheless. Very kind. So let's continue. All right. Israel is bombing Syria again. I don't know if one of you or some of you are keeping count. I've lost count for this year. So I don't know the tally for this year, but they bombed Syria just 2 days ago. Let me show you what happened. So you can see over here the T4 or Tias military base, which is in Homs, in the Homs governorate, right? So Damascus down here, and this is Homs, and it's also called the T4 air base. So Tias T4 air base. This is the largest air base in Syria, and this was bombed by Israeli planes, who reportedly were not coming from the south, but or rather the southwest, but rather from El Tanf. So El Tanf is a U.S. military base, an illegal U.S. military base, which is set up there, and it's they do it under the guise of it's a co-project between the U.S. Forces and the Free Syrian Army, which is basically another way of saying Al Qaeda, and so. So that's what it is. And apparently the planes came from that direction. I also saw a report of U.S. reconnaissance planes flying in the vicinity. So I think this was done with the support of American planes. It's, again, I think you all know this, but the Israelis and the Americans always collaborate on intelligence and military issues. So it's not like it's something new. But just telling you what was reported. Now, the conclusion... 6 Syrian soldiers wounded, no casualties, and most of the Israeli missiles were shot down. Okay? So, again, why do they bomb this base, which they've done before, by the way? Same reason as they always, same pretext that they always give. They don't necessarily have to do it themselves. The media will do it for them because they're a mouthpiece. So, they say that, this base... It's not an ordinary military base. It has Iranian troops there. It has Hezbollah targets. Yeah, but who gave you the right to bomb it anyway? Who cares if it has Iranian targets or it has, Macedonian soldiers or Mickey Mouse? Who the fuck asked you? Who said you have the right to come bomb it? Like, what kind of a logic is that? Doesn't matter. This is how they justify it, right? And it's interesting because the Israelis don't even admit to the strikes. Never mind who they struck. So you can see how the media, they immediately come out and they start defending it and start rationalizing it, right? And they struck this base before, like I said. They usually bomb Damascus or other places in Syria, but mostly Damascus almost every week. Almost every week. So that's what the $3.8 billion that the United States gives Israel goes towards. It goes towards occupying Palestine mainly, but also towards bombing Syria. And of course, when they bomb Syria, they violate Lebanese airspace to go through Lebanese airspace. And yeah, that's what it's used for. That's what the squad are helping to fund. Very, very, very nice of them. So... This is this is a weekly occurrence, like we said. They're either bombing Gaza or they're bombing Syria on a weekly basis, and they always use this pretext of Iranian targets, which is absurd. If you reverse the situation, do you think that they would tolerate the reverse? Do you think that, for example, the United States would accept Mexico bombing southern Texas or something every week because they want to target something? They would never tolerate one bomb. They wouldn't tolerate one grenade, one bullet, never mind jets coming in, right? And so instead of calling it for what it is, which is a violation of sovereignty, which it's a war crime, it's a violation of the UN Charter, the media, they spin it as some kind of necessary action, right? Like some noble action. Oh, they're hitting Iranian targets. What the fuck? What do you mean Iranian? Where's your proof for that? You just spout that nonsense out. And again, what business is it of yours if there are Iranian troops who are in Syria? Syria is a sovereign country. It's not your fucking colony. It can invite whoever it wants to defend Syrian soil from the very attacks that we were talking about, the weekly attacks. We're just supposed to sit down and do nothing? Like, how dare you? How dare you have a defense partnerships? Shut up and let us bomb you. This is their fucking logic. They're insane, right? It's this colonial bullshit attitude. So, you know, they think that by saying that they can justify committing acts of war. It's an act of aggression, an act of war. You know, if someone invaded U.S. airspace or some jets came and bombed the Israelis, you think they would shut up? You think they would tolerate that? So this is how they manufacture consent, because by saying, oh my God, Iran is so evil. Oh my God, Hezbollah is so evil. They drill this into your fucking brain every day. They drill it into your mind nonstop. They vilify Iran. They vilify Hezbollah. So when you see a headline that says Israel struck Iranian targets in Syria, you're like, oh, that's good. Iran equals bad. So that must be good that they hit. This is what they do. It's conditioning, right? They brainwash you. This is how they manufacture consent. So you acquiesce to acts of war. They're acts of aggression. When you bomb another country, it's a fucking act of war. And they know this very well. And they're trying to get away with it. They think they can get away with it for the time being because Syria is under a lot of duress. You know, it's going through a war for 10 years now. So obviously it doesn't have the resources. It doesn't have the capabilities to fend off these attacks that occur on a weekly basis. And we know the Israelis, by their own account, by their own admission, are working with Al-Qaeda. It's not me saying that. This is the former head of their intelligence service, the Mossad. He's just admitting it on Al Jazeera, right? So this is something that they've admitted to. They work with fucking Al-Qaeda in Syria to hurt the Syrian people, to hurt the Syrian government. Like, that's how low they stoop. No different. This is who Syria is facing. Zionists, Al-Qaeda, imperialists. That's what it's about, right? And not just that, of course, but all the other various offshoots they funded. You know, these are just the things they admit to. It's much more sinister and nefarious than that, of course. So again, when I talk about these things, people are like, "Oh, is it Friday again?" Like, it's so normal that they do this, right? And then they talk about rules-based order, and they talk about, "Oh, we're the only democracy in the Middle East." What a load of horse manure. They have no respect for international law. They have no respect for anyone's sovereignty. They have no respect for human rights. They have no respect for the UN Charter. They don't give a shit about this. They violate it every day. So, you know, next time you want to listen to Israelis or Zionists or imperialists talking about Syria or Iran, I mean, look at their own actions. Just imagine if Iran was bombing some country every day or every week, or Syria was bombing another country. Right? They do this and get away with it because they have the whole media apparatus supporting them and reframing things and brainwashing people to acquiesce to this kind of aggression. They're very important. You know, you have an entire industry behind this. You just don't question it. No one questions this in German media, English media, French media. It's just accepted like it's normal. Like, yeah, of course the United States has carriers off the coast of Iran. Of course Israel is bombing Syria. Like, yeah, why shouldn't they? Right? They're Iranian targets. Just cuckoo. Complete warmongering bullshit, really. In other news, right, like this is so common. Speaking of the apartheid regime, not state, regime. Speaking of the apartheid regime, oh boy, y'all are ready. As you recall, the United States Congress recently voted to fund Israel's Iron Dome. Again, because usually Israel gets $3.8 billion per year in military assistance, and after slaughtering Palestinians in May, their Iron Dome was empty and needed to be replenished. And so the United States Congress rushed to give Israel another $1 billion before even dealing with the government spending bill. Because as you know, sending billions of dollars to Israel for their military is much more important and a higher priority than dealing with your own constituents, right? You'll never see American politicians rush to draft a bill, a standalone bill, to give you health care. They'll drop dead before they do that, right? They'd sooner die than give you health care and put in the same kind of energy for you. And so recently, this standalone bill passed, 420 in favor, 9 against. The people who voted against it, one of them was a Republican, the other 8 were Democrats. Most of them, so-called progressives. They call themselves progressives. The squad, right? And as you remember, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, New York congresswoman, she switched her vote at the last second from no to present. And then she shed these crocodile tears on the House floor, and she put out some stinking press release, which, I mean, this is such a cringy word salad. It's horrific. I'll read it to you in a second. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to put you through that. I'm not making you suffer. I'm going to play you a clip. She was asked by Mahdi Hassan why she voted present. Let's take a look, all right?
It's something that has been obviously very difficult, but the question, that is what happened that day.
Congresswoman, the question that a lot of people asked me to ask you this is, was it worth doing present? Because it didn't really satisfy anyone. The supporters of Israel are mad at you for not voting for it. Critics of Israel are mad at you for not voting against it. Do you regret that?
You know, it is something that I weigh, because there's always the macro and then there's the micro. And in the macro of narrative, of politics, of national impact, you know, I probably should have just gone with my value. But in the macro, which would be to vote no. But in the micro, I do believe that this created a window in our community to be able to bring all folks to the table, because my great fear is that we are going to import the same sort of contention around this issue, and we can have a progressive movement that defends Palestinian human rights, that is Muslim, Christian, Jewish. So in the micro, I believe that it created a window of opportunity for us in the Bronx. But in the macro, it was very difficult, yes.
What the fuck is she saying? Did she just swallow a dictionary? Yeah, you know, the micro, macro, microscope, the window, community, desk, chair, computer, camera. Yeah, progressive. Yes, we're gonna come together at the table. What the fuck is she saying? What was this bullshit answer? She still didn't explain why you voted present. What is she talking about? And then her, this is even worse, right? Actually, I'm not sure which is worse. This is the press release that she put out a few days after, right? Again, just no explanation. She says she's going to explain why she voted present, but there's no explanation. It's just bullshit. Oh God, she sounds so bad. She sounds like, you know, every typical politician trying to get out of a question about Palestine and why they are supporting the apartheid regime. It would have been better if she had said nothing. It would have been better for her to keep her mouth shut than say that. What is wrong with these politicians? Why are they so spineless? She used to say it's a massacre. She used to go on Twitter and she'd criticize the Israelis. How can they shoot people? How can they shoot Palestinians? It's a massacre. And now, oh, well, you know, there's the micro and the macro. And no, it's really simple. Like, do you oppose the Israeli occupation of Palestine or not? It's really that simple. It's a dead simple question. It's so easy. It's one of the easiest things in politics to understand. You have settler colonizers and you have people who are colonized. It's that simple. It's that dead easy. But of course, she has to give this bullshit answer, right? And she wants to bring all these people to the table. Who do you want to bring to the table? You want to bring people like Netanyahu to the table, like Bennett? What exactly do they have to say? Yes, we think that we should be able to kill Palestinians and steal their homes. What you want to debate the occupation? You want to see like how, if it's a bit bad or kind of bad? No, it's a fucking occupation. What debate do you need to understand about this issue? So do you see how they slapped her up? Before she was criticizing the Israelis, and then, you know, she gets into office and her peers, her superiors, whoever, they start slapping her up. They're like, no, you need to shut your mouth. You can't talk like that about Israel. Especially, not just as a U.S. politician, especially from New York. Right? You can't do that. Supporting Israel is in your job description. And so she then starts saying, oh, well, you know, maybe I don't understand this so much. Like I need to read more about this. Like again, it's so complicated, right? You're a fucking congresswoman. What do you mean? You should. How do you not know about this? You need to study it more. You knew perfectly what was happening before, and now she's like, well, there's the micro and the macro, and there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Oh my God, this word salad. I can't tell if that was worse or this was worse. Do you remember this other word salad over here?
What actions do you think can be taken to support movements towards peace, both between Israelis and Palestinians, as well as within the entire region, such as the Abraham Accords?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, earlier just now, you and I were talking about the what and the how.
Yes.
And I think that when we talk about establishing peace, centering people's humanities, protecting people's rights, it's not just about the what and the end goal, which often gets a lot of focus. But I actually think it's much more about the how and the way.
Yo, I'm going to put you out of your misery. I'm going to stop this right here. I can't stand it. I can't stand this shit. It's worse than a regular politician, because the regular politician, they'll wiggle out of the question another way, but she's trying to sound like really, hip and like she gets it, and like there's the where, and it's more about the how, and it's so bad. It's so bad. Here, I want to play something else. Don't worry, I won't torture you too much. Here's Jamal Bowman. So Jamal Bowman, he voted for the Iron Dome, right? You have to understand something, man. Jamal Bowman, he stole his seat from Elliot Abrams. Elliot Abrams is one of AIPAC, so the Zionist lobby, the Israeli lobby. He's one of their top guys in the U.S. Congress. So you can't unseat Elliot Abrams and then not support Israel. So this bullshit that he supports, I'm for two-state solution, complete nonsense. Iron Dome funding, he voted for it. The $3.8 billion for Israel, he voted for it. So did Ilhan Omar. So did Ayanna Pressley, right? I think that's far worse than AOC's present vote. Didn't get anywhere near the same amount of attention. Ilhan Omar just gave Israel $3 billion. I'm the only one who talked about it, apparently. I didn't see anyone mention this. Unreal. Anyway, I'm just going to play you the clip from Bowman. Also, Mehdi Hassan, same show, asked him the same question.
Congressman, before we run out of time, I have to ask, you have been a very passionate and eloquent critic of Israel's occupation, including in interviews with me. Last week, we had this big controversial vote in the House over whether to fund Israel's Iron Dome aerial threat system to the tune of $1 billion. It's already funded. It was an extra billion. Your squad colleagues, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley voted no. AOC controversially voted present. But you voted yes. How come?
Well, it's important for me to...
Well, Mehdi, I'm a Zionist bitch.
make sure I represent everyone within my district, not just some people within my district. And this was an issue that was very important to many people in my district. But secondly, voting in favor...
Okay, hold on a second. What does that mean? This is an important issue to people in my district. Where is your district? In Haifa or in New York? Are you an Israeli congressman or a U.S. congressman? What the fuck does that mean? Giving $1 billion, giving $5 billion to a foreign occupation force is important for your fucking district? Who lives in your district? What they say, when he says it's important for my district, he's not talking about his constituents. He's talking about the establishment. He's talking about his peers in Congress, his superiors like Pelosi, Biden. He's talking about the Israelis. That's who he's serving. You don't give a foreign occupation force billions of dollars for your constituents. Your constituents want fucking healthcare, I can tell you that much. Your constituents want some goddamn money. Your constituents want to live debt-free. They want to go to college. They don't give a fuck about funding Israel. What kind of a bullshit response is that? And I'm glad Mehdi Hassan asked him the question, but he left it to the end both times, right? It's like, oh yeah, just before we go, how about that money you gave to the apartheid regime? Okay, thanks very much. Catch you next time. There's no follow-up, nothing. They just give this bullshit answer and then that's it. This is the squad. These are the progressives, right? And again, I mean, what Ilhan Omar did in July, that's way worse. That's way worse. She every year they have to vote on it, even though Obama signed the memorandum of understanding for 10 years. So Israel gets 38 billion over 10 years, meaning every year 3.8 billion. They still have to vote for it every year. It still has to go through Congress. It passes every time, of course, right? This time, however, in July, it wasn't going to pass. It was neck and neck. It passed 217, 212. The squad, they easily could have held this up. They could have put their foot down and said, no, we're not voting for it. What do you think we're going to give money to Israel? Are you crazy? No. They didn't do that. They went and gave money to Israel. They made sure. So they didn't just vote for it. They didn't just vote to give Israel money. They made sure Israel got the money, because without their votes, it couldn't have passed. It passed 217, 212. That's Ilhan Omar. That's Ayanna Pressley. That's Jamal Bowman. I'm a progressive. Really? How progressive of you. Thank you for giving Israel bombs to bomb Gaza, to bomb Syria. Well done. You are I can really see how your politics are rooted in human rights. You fucking bags of hot air. They're all talk, blah, blah, blah. All talk, just lip service. If you look at how they vote, criminals, villainous. And back then, AOC votes no, right? Because she can afford to vote no. Because she's like, okay, Ilhan Omar, Presley, Bowman, you guys vote yes. Me and Tlaib will vote no. I mean, I think Tlaib is going to vote no anyway because, she's Palestinian. I would at least hope so, that she would do that. But she did. I mean, I would hope that she does that off of principle, not because it's kind of organized or coordinating. But my point is that they always do this rotating villain thing, right? So back then, in July, Ilhan Omar votes yes. Ayanna Pressley votes yes. Cori Bush votes yes. Now, in September, for the Iron Dome, they do it the other way around. Cori Bush votes no. Ayanna Pressley votes no. Ilhan Omar votes no. Because they know it's going to pass. It passed 420-9. So they can afford to vote no and look like, oh, you see, we're opposing Israel. We didn't fund their Iron Dome. Yeah, you're good. You're good. The fact that people can't wake up to this shit is staggering. This is staggering. There's still people who have their heads stuck up so far the squad's ass. They're funding the murder of Palestinians, the occupation of Palestine, the occupation of Syria. What the fuck is wrong with you? What more proof do you need that these people are playing ball with the establishment? AOC, she said once that you can effectuate far more change. She said, so what if you're a one-term Congress person? You can effectuate far more change. You can effectuate 10 years worth of change if you're willing to be brave. And they're not willing to be brave because now they're in power. Power is very tempting, man. That shit is addictive, right? So you gotta think for them, they got all this attention, all this money, they got healthcare now, right? They're Congress people. They're as Ro Khanna said, they're a privileged percentile, right? Some of the most privileged individuals on the face of the earth. They don't want to give that up. And if that means, playing ball with Israel, they do it. They do it. I'm not saying that. They voted that. They voted that. And so the fact that AOC cannot take a clear stance on a vote that is, on a bill that's guaranteed to pass, as we said, it passed 420-9. This is very, very important to understand because when she does that, she's looking out for her career. It's nothing else, right? She's looking out for her career. And these people are not interested. AOC is not interested in being a one-term congressperson like she said. Not me. She said that. And effectuating change. She's interested in being a multi-term congressperson. She wants to stay there. She wants to be the next Nancy Pelosi. That's what this is about. And so regardless, I don't, we can speculate all day about what their goals are. For me, this is a very simple issue. If someone put a bill in front of my face and said, you got to vote to give Israel money, I'd say, go shove that thing up your ass. Apparently, they don't have the same energy. So we have an issue here. Do you understand? There you go. And again, that thing in July is far more scandalous, and received less attention, which is bizarre to me. I mean, again, AOC's vote, the present vote is bad, but Ilhan Omar voting to give Israel, what the fuck? Don't you remember what they did to her? How much they smeared her? I guess it worked. I guess they got the message, the squad. They're like, oh, if we step out of line, they're going to shit on us. So we're not going to vote against Israel anymore. We might criticize them a bit, but when it comes down to voting, we will make sure that the bills pass. And again, it's not just with Palestine. You guys know, I listen, you can't dispute this, okay? Go read this article and look at every single vote, how I outlined this. They didn't just do this with the Iron Dome or funding Israel. They did it with the $15 minimum wage. They did it with re-electing Nancy Pelosi. They did it with funding the Capitol Hill police. I counted the votes for you. I laid it out so clearly that anyone could understand this. Every single time. The squad they're not just voting against their stated principles, against the things they ran on. They're instrumental. They are making sure that these things pass. They are always casting the tie-breaking votes. Right? Always. It's them. Go look at it. You know, if you can't see that by now, I don't know what to tell you. And if you think you want to rationalize that and think that this is good behavior, I don't know what to tell you either. You know, it's very clear whose side they're on. Mark, thank you for the donation. Says, don't forget, there's the known, there's the known and the unknown during the rent moratorium theater. She's quoting Rumsfeld now, is she? Huh? Nas says, don't forget AOC's known and unknown word salad. Yeah, so I mean, I did forget about that. When I think of that, we have known knowns and unknown knowns. I think of Rumsfeld. I forgot about this one. I'm glad you guys reminded me, right? Vero says it's about the how and the when for the macro and the micro of the what. Very simple. She's going to turn into Rumsfeld very soon, you know? Very good. Nays Garden says AOC is working for herself. Well, I mean, it would appear so. Again, we can speculate all day as to why, but I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think you can rationalize that. You know, you're in such a what the fuck am I supposed to say, man? What am I supposed to say? Like, what does it take for people to get this through their heads that, you know, these so-called progressives, the squad, they're not doing what they were elected to do. When it comes to Medicare for all, they don't want to force the vote. When it comes to the Capitol Hill police, they made sure that passed to give them $2 billion. When it came to funding Israel's Iron Dome, you know, they voted no, but 3 months before they voted give $3 billion, $3.8 billion to Israel. They cast the tie-breaking votes to get that passed. Not anyone else, right? When it came to re-electing Nancy Pelosi, again, when it came to passing the omnibus without the $15 minimum wage, they did that. They are the ones who not only voted against their stated principles, they made sure that these things passed. They cast the essential, the tie-breaking, the necessary votes for these bills to pass. This is scandalous. Like, how many more bills does it take before people get this through their heads? What the fuck? What are you waiting for? Like, what? How many bills do they have to fund? How many shitty bills do they have to pass until you finally go like, oh yeah, that's not good. I don't think these people really have our interests at heart. Dude, they're funding the Israeli occupation. They're coming on TV and then saying, well, you know, macro, micro, the when, the how, the north, the east, west, south. What the fuck is this word salad? I would respect you maybe a tiny bit more if you could, you know, grow a spine and say, yeah, I voted to give Israel money because I'm too scared not to give them the money. I voted president because I'm looking out for my career. At least be fucking honest. It's too much to ask from a politician, right? It's too much to ask from a politician. So they're funding the occupation in Palestine. They're funding the Israelis to bomb Gaza every week, to bomb Syria every week, to occupy Palestine, occupy Lebanon, occupy Syria. They're funding an illegal fucking occupation, and then you have the nerve to say, oh yeah, I'm a progressive. My politics are rooted in human rights. You know, there's the macro and the micro. What are you fucking smoking? Oh la la. This is the state of American politics. Like these are the straws, you know, that they're grasping onto. Oh yeah, we can't do anything else. No, we have to swallow this bullshit. You know, we should normalize this group of people funding an apartheid regime because that's all we got. We can't do anything better. Wow, you have really low standards. You know, murdering Palestinians and Syrians is kind of like not murdering Palestinians and Syrians is kind of a low bar. You know, you really don't. No, it doesn't get through their heads, apparently. Hopeless. It's hopeless. So, over here, I'm moving on to the next thing, so you can see what's up. Okay, just allow me to drink something. I'm kind of dehydrated. All right, give me a second. And again, I'm very grateful for your donations and questions, and if you have any, I'm more than happy to read them. Okay, so onwards. You guys remember last year we had the Abraham Accords, right? So Donald Trump managed to bring Bahrain and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel, and he's such an amazing statesman and a diplomat. Now, these countries have been wanting to normalize ties for years with the Israelis, right? Saudi Arabia is likely next because they've always had ties, you know, under the table with the Israelis. And so the Abraham Accords, you know, they just put the cards on the table. That was it. And just last week, as part of the Abraham Accords now, you know, being fully implemented, and Bahrain and the UAE having stuck a knife in the back of the Palestinians and the Arabs, the Israeli foreign minister, or I should say the Israeli occupation minister, visited Bahrain. And people, here he is getting off the plane, right? Yep, it's real. It's real. And so, that's just scandalous, honestly. That's just scandalous. And so people got angry, rightfully so. I want to show you the reaction from, because, you know, this is the government in Bahrain. But let's see what the people think of it. Not the government, the people, right?
هذا الكيان الغاصب كيان مجرم لا نعترف به لا دولة ولا غيره لا أهلا ولا سهلا بهذا الكيان المجرم التطبيع جريمة وخيانة عهدا لك لن نلين يا قبلة المسلمين يا قبلة المسلمين يا قبلة المسلمين عهدا لك لن نلين يا قبلة المسلمين.
That was great. So I'm going to translate what they're saying. They're saying, La ahlan wa la sahlan, which means, you know, when you say welcome in Arabic, you say ahlan wa sahlan. And so the negation of that, the opposite is as La ahlan wa la sahlan, you're not welcome. And they're saying that normalization, you know, this with the criminal regime, they're against that and they reject it. So you can see them holding up the Palestinian flag in solidarity. And this is really important to understand, because when Bahrain normalized ties with the Israelis, the people don't accept this. With the Emirates, it's a bit more complicated because, I don't know if you guys know this, but 80% of the population in the UAE are not Arabs. They're actually foreigners from various countries, could be British, could be whatever. You know, it's just you have a lot of expats, you have a lot of foreigners working there. And even then, among the Arabs, they don't accept this. But so, you know, again, most of the population is not native in the UAE. But when it comes to Bahrain, the people don't accept this. Morocco, for example, Morocco has also, you know, unfortunately established ties of some sort with the Israelis. People don't accept this, right? Sudan, they were forced into this. You know, what happened to Sudan when they normalized ties or were coerced into establishing relations with the Israelis. The United States removed them from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. So do you understand what I'm telling you here? Apparently, in the United States, the criteria for being a state sponsor of terrorism is whether you have ties with Israel. Wow, that's really some telling criteria. So here, I just want to show you something from Morocco, for example. You can just look this up. This is from June, just a few months ago. Middle East Monitor. The headline says, Moroccans refuse to rent property to Israel liaison officer in Rabat. So, again, the people are against this, right? A number of Moroccans in the capital, in Rabat, have refused to rent their properties to Israel's chargé d'affaires, Govrin, forcing him to stay in a hotel. Forcing him to stay in a hotel since his appointment to the country. I mean, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, Moroccan, a Sahifa website said the company charged with renting a residence for Govrin had found an appropriate place for him in a residential complex in the prestigious Zaire Road in Rabat. But the apartment owners categorically refused to rent it to the Israeli diplomat as soon as they discovered his identity. That's brilliant. So, you know, once again, you can see how the Arab people reject this. And I need to be very clear with something here. This is not something to do with being Arab. It's not something to do with being Muslim. This is about human rights. This is about anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. The Israelis, they're in Palestine, they're in Lebanon, they're in Syria, occupying our land. And this is a settler colonial project created by white Europeans. Okay? You have British and French diplomats, you know, who came, diplomats is really the wrong word, colonizers, who came and divided up the Middle East to their liking after World War I, and also devised a plan, the Balfour Declaration makes this very clear, to create a Zionist state in Palestine. This is not something, that is of the region. It was imposed on the region, just like many of the borders, you know? The globe behind me, you go and look at many of the borders in Africa, many of the borders in the Middle East. Africans did not draw these borders. Arabs did not draw these borders. These are white European colonizers who drew these borders for us, right? Against our will. And they divided us based on sectarian lines on purpose, because they wanted to sow, they wanted to sow dissent. They wanted to sow discord. They wanted to create as many divisions as possible. And so the easiest way to divide and conquer is literally to divide and conquer based on sect. So you come to a place where there's, you don't have that many issues that stand out, but you come and amplify them. Right? So in a place where people were living in relative harmony, all of a sudden there's chaos. It's like Iraq. You look at Iraq after 2003, what happened? Suddenly you have a sectarian war. Okay, but there was no sectarian war. There was no violence on this scale before the invasion. Who came and imposed this and created this and helped this condition arise? American, British, colonizers, invaders, right? And so when they divided up the Middle East with Sykes-Picot at the end of World War I, once they used the Arabs to get rid of the Turkish, the Ottoman Empire, they carved everything up based on sectarian lines. And another thing that they did is they added the Zionist state, And I mean, again, when people stand in solidarity with the Palestinians, it's because we know what the Palestinians are going through, how they are suffering on a daily basis. They have been denied a state. They have been denied human rights. They have been denied freedom of movement, of assembly. They have been denied basic necessities, infrastructure, food, water, running water. They have been denied every single basic element to sustain a normal, happy life as a human being. All of it. They have been colonized. Their homes bulldozed in front of their fucking eyes. And this is protected and subsidized by the West. And so, once again, this is a human rights issue. It's an anti-colonial issue. It's a national liberation issue. Not just for the Palestinians, again, for the Lebanese, for the Syrians as well. Shib'a Farms in Lebanon is under occupation. Lebanon was occupied for, a decade and a half by the Israelis, South Lebanon. And they still try to bomb it when they can, although they've, since 2006, they haven't done that except once. But Syria, the Golan Heights are still under occupation, right? So all of these countries are under occupation, under control, in one form or another, by a European colonial settler project that is imposed on us almost a century ago, but which still has ramifications to this day. So again, it's an anti-colonial issue, it's a human rights issue. Let's be unequivocal about that. Unequivocal. And so you can see that the people, they don't tolerate this. You have a few corrupt traitors, which is what they are. They're traitors to the Palestinian cause. They're traitors to the liberation of the Levant, of the Middle East. They are traitors to the human rights of those who are occupied by the Israelis, who are normalizing ties with the Israelis. A few corrupt ministers, a few corrupt politicians, but they don't represent the will of the people. And you can see that so evidently. And I told you this when the Abraham Accords happened. I didn't need these videos. We didn't have these videos yet to even tell you this. I told you it's only a few people at the top who are doing this. The al-Sha'ab, the people, they don't support this. Not at all. Not at all. And the same is in Jordan and Egypt, by the way. Jordan and Egypt were also coerced in some ways, through one form or another to establish ties with the Israelis, right? With the Americans pushing this. And to this day, you can go to Egypt, go to Jordan, ask any person in the street what they think of normalizing ties with the Israelis. Go ask them. I won't say anything. Go and ask them. See what they tell you. Pick any random person on the street. Anyone. Okay. So I've babbled on for quite a bit today, which is great. If you would be so kind to allow me to plug the show. Remember, this is independent media after all. I need your support to keep the show running, and it's only through your support that I can do it, and I'm very grateful for it. So one way you can support the show is through PayPal or CashApp or Venmo. You can send a donation. You could also send a question if you want, and I'll answer it. You can scan the QR codes on the screen with your phone, with your camera. You just open the camera, and it should prompt you. And there are also links below if you'd like to do it through a link. Another way that you can support the show is also on Patreon. So that means a monthly donation can be as big or as little as you like. There's no limit or a threshold or minimum. So some people donate $2, some people send $5. It really makes no difference, and no difference what currency. I'm grateful for all of your support. Thank you so much. I think we're somewhere in the 400 range. It keeps fluctuating. Sometimes at the beginning of the month, unfortunately, Patreon sometimes, I don't know, if the payment doesn't go through, I think they kick off some people who signed up, so you might have to re-sign up. I don't know how it works. But I've realized that at the beginning of the month, the numbers sometimes go down. So we used to be at 425, for example, you can see on the thermometer here. But now it's 406. So I don't know, it fluctuates up and down. In any case, our goal is to get to 450, and there will be a big surprise once we get to, I don't know if it's 500 or 1,000. We wanted to make a piñata, and I will let you guys vote on who the piñata will be. Pick your favorite politician. But yeah, in any case, I'm very grateful. So the link is patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. Another really good thing you can do, which is absolutely free, is to go make an account on Rockfin. Today we talked about censorship so much, right? And this is a recurring theme. So not just today, but always, we discuss big tech censorship. You guys already know what happened once with demonetizing the channel. It's happened to many other leftist YouTubers. And so one way to mitigate that is to have a contingency plan, right? To have alternatives. And so one of those alternatives is Rockfin, ROKFIN.com. You can just make an account for free. The live stream is on there right now. The videos are all up there. It's, a one-to-one clone of what I'm doing on YouTube. There's no censorship. You know, I don't have to worry about putting Palestine or Syria in the title. How dare you put your country in the title? It's sick. So anyway, you can go make an account there. It's free. You just have to make an account. That's the only kind of hurdle. But other than that, it's totally free. Some people do like premium stuff. So like if you want to support that, it's $10 a month, but it would be for everyone. So, you know, if you watch other leftists, I don't know, like, Convo Couch, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Max Blumenthal, everyone is on there. So it's really nice to see that platform growing. And you'll find all your favorite channels there too, which I think is great. That we have this alternative, especially given all this big tech censorship. You can see how the Democrats, and not just the Democrats, but the whole establishment in DC, large swaths of it are trying to push for more Silicon Valley censorship, and they get people deplatformed, not just from one place, but from many places. And so this is very important that we have alternatives. Another alternative that I'd urge you to check out is Substack. Again, totally free. It's just where I post articles. I also send out notifications when I go live, so you never miss that in case YouTube doesn't send you one, which is often the case. RichardMedhurst.substack.com. So, yeah, that's about it. And again, Substack is a thing where you can sign up for free, and if you want, you can support. I don't believe in paywalls. I don't think that news should be. I mean, everyone does their own thing. I'm just talking about myself. So anyway. Thank you so much for your support. I'm so grateful for everyone who signed up on Substack, on Patreon, who's donated, who even likes, comments, subscribes. This all helps to fight the algorithm. It all helps the channel to grow. I couldn't do this without you. I'm hugely indebted towards you. Thank you so much. We also have a Telegram if you want to follow there. So that's another thing. In any case, I'll just put up the donation screen, and I'll see if anyone has sent anything. I think some of you might have sent something on PayPal, which I missed. You'll forgive me. It's just loading. Nestle, thank you so much. There's no note attached, but nonetheless, I'm very grateful. Not just for your support on PayPal, but also I saw earlier for your super chats. Thank you so much. You're very sweet. I really appreciate that. I see Ross has also sent a few super chats. Thank you, Ross. Ross is always showing up, and I'm very grateful. You're very kind. We also have some tips on Rockfin. This is from Independent Left News. Says catching a live at Richard Medhurst stream. Wow, missed you, brother. Now that I'm doing a show, maybe you'll let me interview you. It would be a sincere honor and pleasure. So we definitely have to do something. I saw Colin also has a show now, which is brilliant. So congratulations to you both. And I have a special panel which I'll be doing on the weekend, by the way, which I'll let you guys know about. But we need to work something out. And thanks again for the tip. I really appreciate it. Rockfin is also some place where you can send tips, like YouTube. So just give me a second. Mark has sent something on YouTube, and Mark says it's got to be an AOC piñata. Oh my god! Could you imagine the outrage? I was thinking more Henry Kissinger. Honestly, I was thinking more something like Henry Kissinger. Dick Cheney, something like that. But I will leave the choice up to you. We will have a poll, and it will be up to you guys. In any case, we'll have to see how that goes. But regardless, it's funny because I saw a picture with Dick. No, it was with Henry Kissinger, and actually, I'll just pull it up for you. Let me pull this up because it's I had to witness it, so you have to now as well. I had to witness it. Now you do too. Okay, give me a second. Just trying to pull this picture up. Where was the scourge of neocons? Where was the scourge of neocons? I saw them somewhere. Let's see. Found it. I found it. Okay, so hold on. Let me get something ready for you guys. Let me get something ready, something special. Okay. Very good. Very good. Let's do this. Hillary Clinton Hillary Clinton had a little incident. Let's take a look. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So Hillary Clinton, on her way to Queen's University, I believe this was in Belfast, and people yelling at her war criminal and other obscenities, which you might have picked up. Well deserved. The only thing that confused me about this video, I wasn't sure which war crime they were referring to, so I started pondering as I contemplated Hillary's long and extensive career in war criminality. So, speaking of war criminals, here's a scourge of them. You can see Secretary of State Blinken posing with his predecessors. So, this is on Twitter. What does he say? He says, "Thank you, Secretary Condoleezza Rice, for bringing us together. I was humbled to join you and my other remarkable predecessors, Secretary Baker and Secretary Kissinger, in honoring the legacy of Secretary George Shultz. I'm proud to work at a State Department that you all shaped." Wow. That's a weird definition of proud. You know, only someone like Blinken could be proud of this crap. How many, I saw people on Twitter asking how many bodies do you think they have between them? How many people do you think they've killed collectively? Which is it's a very dark, I think it's unfair because Hillary is not in the picture. So you have to count Hillary as well. Otherwise it's not a fair competition, you know? But no, this is incredible, honestly, that people think Henry Kissinger is to be, you know, Christ. You know, when they give things like the Nobel Peace Prize to people like Barack Obama or Henry Kissinger, I mean, it really loses its meaning in a way, you know, which sucks because my parents are Nobel Peace Prize laureates, right? UN peacekeepers. So I hope that balances it out. But scumbags like Kissinger and, you know, Obama, no, they shouldn't have that. And the thing is, Mike Pompeo is also a former Secretary of State, not just a CIA director. And, you know, I mean, their job is largely to just go around and inflict suffering on other people. They just do it, you know, while calling themselves diplomats. They're just war criminals. And when it comes to Hillary Clinton, I mean, again, I was contemplating what they were referring to, and I couldn't figure out if it was Syria, it was Libya, it was Iraq. You know, has she met a war that she didn't like? I think Libya is perhaps the worst one, honestly. Libya is, which is, you know, I say that as a Syrian even, because what they did to Libya is just absolutely scandalous. All of them are scandalous. But I want to talk to you a bit about Libya in a second, and you know, it's really heartbreaking. So at least now the Secretary of State speaks French and plays guitar, right? They were writing about that in the media. Oh my God, look, we have a Secretary of State who plays guitar like an amateur. That's not me saying that. He's saying that. We have a woman National Director of Intelligence. So now a woman will be directing assassinations and working with the Mossad to, you know, commit nuclear terrorism. And there's a woman in charge of the Treasury. So now Janet Yellen, a woman, will be inflicting sanctions and starving people in Iran and Syria. Lovely, right? It makes all the difference. I'm really feeling the energy. So this is it. You know, this is the Rainbow Coalition death cult that they've put together. But you can really see there's no difference in policies. You know, when they talk about both sides of the aisle, it's really one regime, one party with two wings. You know, Democrat, Republican, it's the same crap. They're all the same. They just differ in name. That's the only thing. But it's interesting with Hillary not being able to go in without being called a war criminal. I remember Julian Assange giving an interview. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was The Guardian. I can't remember which outlet it was, but he was basically talking about how, they're trying to persecute him, Julian Assange, for his work. But Donald Rumsfeld, he also has to, check where he can go, where he can travel, because, for fear of being arrested for war crimes. And I think the same is true of some of these lovely, fine people that we have in front of us, So they're not 100%, off the hook. And they've committed, really, mass murder is the only way to talk about it. They come here and they say, oh, XYZ must go. They say, they just dictate like who must rule another country as if it's a colony or something. And if you really look at what they have done, what their so-called careers are, it's atrocity after atrocity. They don't just kill people; they destroy entire countries, nations, in ways that are unimaginable. That you can't recover from. So, war criminal, putting it mildly, even. But yeah, when we're talking about Hillary Clinton and Libya, there are a few things I wanted to say. They really screwed Libya over in a really horrific way. Libya, when you look at the HDI, so the Human Development Index, Libya was number 1 in Africa, right? Libya was the richest country in Africa, the most independent in many ways, resource-wise. And they came and they destroyed all of that, right? So they fearmonger about Qaddafi. Oh my God, he's so terrible. We have to come in. We have to bomb everything. And they just destroyed this country. We're 10 years later. Look at Libya. Look at the state of Libya. They're supposed to have elections in 2 months in December. And there's already a bunch of crises, right? Like votes of no confidence. And up until a year ago, the ceasefire is barely a year ago. And I'm pretty sure most of you watching right now have no idea between whom the ceasefire was. Do you know who's fighting in Libya? Do you know what's happening in Libya? You never hear about it again, right? So you had Sarraj and Haftar, and then, of course, I've gone through the situation with you before, but, when you compare Libya to how it was before, man, Libya was doing good. Qaddafi, he built the Great Man-Made River, and, it's the biggest irrigation project in history, the biggest underground network of pipes. So 70% of fresh water in Libya came from this project. 70%. Can you imagine? So providing fresh water to everyone, to drink, for agriculture, he did that. And they did it without any loans, without any foreign loans, without any foreign banks, any credits. They funded that from their own money. Incredible, right? And that's a project that's cost over $25 billion. Incredible. Self-funded, the biggest irrigation project in the world. So Libya had water, an abundance of water, in a country that's 90% desert. Can you imagine? 90% desert. They had an abundance of water. They're resource independent in terms of water. In terms of gold, Qaddafi had 144 tons of gold in the Libyan central bank. This is, again, a bank. Libya had no external debt. The Libyan central bank is outside the international banking system. And they have their own gold reserves. 144 tons. And Qaddafi wanted to use this to make a golden dinar, a new currency. Because he told the African countries, right? He told the other African nations, his neighbors, we all need to come together, create a new currency that's backed by these gold reserves, called the golden dinar. And with the golden dinar, that's how we're going to sell our resources. We're not going to sell any of our resources, diamonds, oil, you name it. We're not going to sell any of it anymore with US dollars. We're going to sell it exclusively in golden dinar. And that's why they got him. You can't go against the international banking system. You can't go against US hegemony. That's why they got Qaddafi. And you can see in Hillary Clinton's emails, in her emails, they mentioned the gold that I just told you about and what he wanted to do with it. They knew exactly what he was going to do. That's why they got him. So it's nothing to do with human rights, that he's a dictator, all this fucking Western colonial horseshit, fucking propaganda from these white colonial motherfuckers. These people are fucking thieves. They came and they stole the resources. They stole the prosperity that people enjoyed. They destroyed that country and set it back. And they didn't just do it with Libya. They did it to Syria. They did it to Iraq. They did it to Somalia, to Afghanistan, to Pakistan. They're taking over these countries one by one to colonize. So don't come here and talk to me about human rights. Don't talk to me about fucking metrics and all this bullshit that comes out of Western think tanks. In Libya, in Syria, people have food to eat. People have water to drink. Okay? And now these countries, look at them. Look what the West has brought them. Destruction, misery, war, death, disease. Libya had free healthcare. Libya had free education. Libya, like I said, was number one in Africa in terms of, income, standards of living. You go and look at the reports from the UN, the Human Development Index, number one, 53rd in the world. How many countries are on the list in that report, the last one from 2010? I think about 180, 190 countries. Libya is 53rd worldwide. Where is that country now? It's 107th, I believe. It dropped down to 100 something. They destroyed that country. And then they tell you, oh yeah, people, they had it so bad under Qaddafi. What a dictator. All this horse shit, all this manure. They're just brainwashing you. They're just brainwashing you so you don't know what the people are being robbed of, so you don't know what the destruction is doing to the country. So you don't care. So you don't have a before and after to compare with. You just have what they told you. You just have what some pricks on the BBC told you. So, Qaddafi was really one of the last few real Arab leaders. And not just a pan-Arabist, but a pan-Africanist. So he wanted real independence for Africa. Do you understand? In 1973, I believe in 1973, he tried to unify Egypt and Syria into one country. That didn't work. But he of course had plans for Africa, as I told you, with the golden dinar. He wanted to make sure that African countries controlled their own resources. The French, for example, they run the French, for example, they control the monetary policy of 14 countries in Africa. The CFA franc, right? Most of you probably never heard of this currency. This is a colonial currency that 14 countries in Africa use. The CFA franc. So this is a currency that is controlled by France. All of these countries use it over here. See that? So they have the West African CFA franc and the Central African CFA franc. So Qaddafi was like, yo, this is colonial nonsense. We're not accepting this. These are our resources. These are African resources, and Africans should be able to control in what currency they are sold. Africans should be able to control their own monetary policy. Enough with this colonial bullshit. That's why they got Qaddafi. Because you can't run against U.S. hegemony. You can't question the international banking system. You can't do that. Here's the email that I told you about with Hillary Clinton. So you can see here, they say Qaddafi's government holds 143 tons of gold and a similar amount in silver. During late March 2011, these stocks were moved to Sabha, okay? So southwest in the direction of the Libyan border with Niger and Chad, taken from the vaults of, as we talked about, the Libyan Central Bank, right? This gold was accumulated prior to the current rebellion and was intended to be used to establish a pan-African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar. This plan was designed to provide the Francophone African countries with an alternative to the French franc CFA, the currency that I just talked about. And the French knew this. The French knew this, of course, right? And so even though Qaddafi gave Nicolas Sarkozy, who's the French president at the time, he gave him millions of euros for his presidential campaign. He denies it, but we know it's true. He bombed him, right? Like, oh, it doesn't matter that Gaddafi helped get him elected and donated to his campaign. You can't go against French hegemony or American hegemony. You can't question their monetary policy and remove their control over their former colonies. They will get you, and they got him. They didn't just kill him, by the way. You know, they sodomized and they lynched this man. They executed him. And then Hillary, this psycho motherfucker, she jumps for joy and she says, we came, we saw he died. Like, that's what she said. She just celebrated him dying. This is how depraved these people are. And then they have the nerve to call other people dictators. They have the nerve to call other people human rights abusers. They have the nerve. So this is, of course, from WikiLeaks, what I just showed you. It's on the WikiLeaks website. And I want to show you something else, which is very important. So this is Qaddafi in 2008 at the Arab League. And this session was held in Damascus, where I was born. And I want to play you what he said. 2008, okay? Take a look.
شو سبب تدمير العراق وغزو العراق وقتل مليون عراقي؟ وخلاص لقانا الامريكان يجاوبونا على السؤال اللي حاير، لماذا العراق؟ شو سبب له؟ بن لادن عراقي؟ ما هو عراقي، اللي ضربوا نيويورك عراقيين؟ ما هم عراقيين. اللي ضربوا البنتاغون عراقيين؟ ما هم عراقيين. فيها أسلحة دمار شامل عند العراق؟ ما عندها. وحتى لو عند العراق أسلحة دمار شامل، باكستان عندها قنبلة ذرية، والهند عندها قنبلة ذرية، والصين وروسيا وبريطانيا وفرنسا وأمريكا، ما كلها عندها قنابل ذرية. كلها بيدمروها، كويس؟ فندمر كل الدول اللي عندها أسلحة دمار شامل. تجي قوة أجنبية تحتل دولة عربية وتشنق رئيسها، وإحنا نتفرج عليهم ونضحكوا. وليش ما نحقوا في شنق صدام حسين؟ كيف يصير حرب يشنق ورئيس دولة عربية عضو في الجامعة العربية؟ لما تكلموا عن سياسة صدام حسين والخلافة معاه السياسي، ممكن كلنا مختلفين سياسيين معاه، مختلفين حتى مع بعضنا نحن الآن. ما في حاجة تجمعنا أبدا إلا القاعة هذه. ليش ما يكون فيها تحقيق في مقتل صدام حسين؟ قيادة عربية بالكامل تقتل تشنق في المشانق، ما نتفرج. لماذا؟ ممكن الدور جاي عليكم كلكم. اي نعم. ليش امريكا قاتلت مع صدام حسين ضد الخميني؟ كان صديقها. تشيني كان صديق لصدام حسين. رامي سلدي كان وزير دفاع الامريكا لما كان يدمروا في العراق، صديق حميم لصدام حسين، واخيرا باعوه وشنقوه. حتى انتم اصدقاء امريكا، نحن اصدقاء امريكا، بلاش نقول انتم، نحن اصدقاء امريكا كلنا قد توافق امريكا على شنقنا في يوم ما.
Yep. He was right. He was right. He said any one of you might be next. 3 years later, 4 years later, it's him. It was him. And Bashar al-Assad, who you can also see, who's in the video. And when he said, any one of you might be next, they laughed. They thought he's joking. No, he wasn't joking. He was prophesizing. He knew exactly. That's what America does. They work with someone and then they sell them out. And Saddam is not the only person, right? As Qaddafi mentioned, they used Saddam Hussein to hit back, to attack Iran. They gave him chemical weapons. So again, when they said in 2003 that Saddam had chemical weapons and WMDs, this was not true. But they did give them to him 20 years earlier in the 80s. So Iraq attacked Iran 80 to 88. That was the war. And as he said, there's a video even of Donald Rumsfeld. He comes in shaking Saddam's hand. And then 20 years later, nuclear weapons, we have to go and we have to get him. Look at Iraq now. Even Bashar al-Assad, Tony Blair, the Queen of England, they all hosted him, probably tried to court him, I don't know. And then they turn on him. One day to the next. Same thing with Qaddafi, right? He's giving money to Sarkozy. He's on not on good terms with everyone, of course, but with some of them, and then they turn on him. And when we look at these Arab countries who are normalizing ties with the Israelis, the same thing will happen to them one day. They think that, oh yeah, right now America's protecting us, and we will play nice with the Israelis and no one will hurt us. Yo, when push comes to shove, they will sell these countries out. Those guys who thought they were safe, they'll be gone, man. Even the Kurds who are working with the Americans in Syria, right? They still are. But when Trump pulled out of northern Syria, he didn't pull out of northern Syria. He actually just moved the troops to to northeastern Syria and eastern Syria to occupy the oil. But he did leave a vacuum in the north with the border with Turkey. And of course, people were saying, how can you do that? And you're selling out the Kurds and you're putting them in danger of Turkey, which is true, right? And that's actually why the Kurds went and made a deal with the Syrian army to protect them. And so, once again, my point here is that you can see how the Kurds were working with the Americans and then the Americans sold them out. And right now they're still working together with the SDF in Hasakeh and Deir ez-Zor, but there's going to come a day they're going to sell them out again. Mark my words, man. Mark my words. This is how the Western countries do. So that speech is incredible. And when he said we share nothing beyond these halls, I really hate that, but it's true. I really hate that. So, they destroyed Libya because Qaddafi wanted to challenge the monetary policy, the international banking system and monetary system and financial system. This is really the pillar of American and Western hegemony. It's the banking system and the financial pillars of whether it's the U.S. dollar, whether it's the CFA franc. That's really challenging U.S. hegemony, French hegemony in Africa, and they couldn't have that. This is you cross the line, and Syria, just like Libya, has no external debt and has a central bank, Bank al-Markazi, which is outside the international banking system. Are you starting to see a pattern here? If you don't accept Western American multinational corporations taking over your country, or as they say, establishing a new market, which is a nice way of saying that, if you don't accept foreign banks, if you don't take loans from the IMF, from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which are then held over a country in order to coerce and force certain political decisions. They say, oh, you took this loan and you didn't pay us back. If you want any more money and you need the money because your country is in crisis, you need to do this. We want to see this kind of government. You need to do these things. This is how they use the IMF and the World Bank to control, developing countries, among other things, right? And if you don't participate in these schemes, IMF, US dollar, this is what happens to you. It's all about the money. It's all about domination. This is what it is, man. They destroyed Libya, and they don't even talk about it. Because if they talked about it, they told you there are slave trade markets there. If they told you that, the HDI has dropped from 53rd place to 100 something, that the country has regular power cuts, everything is collapsed, there's no healthcare system, you would be appalled. Any person of conscience, any person with common sense would be shocked. They say, what? They went from this to this? We did that? Of course they're not going to tell you. And it's the same thing with Syria. Syria is not perfect either, but it was definitely it had one of the best healthcare systems in the Middle East. The same is true of Iraq. Iraq lost 17,000 doctors after the invasion. Half of the doctors in Iraq left Iraq. Can you imagine half the doctors in your country leave because of an invasion? Can you imagine what that does to a healthcare system, to a country? It's devastating. Never mind the destruction. 12% of hospitals destroyed. This is the truth, man. You can't argue with these numbers. And Syria, again, was self-sufficient in food. Now, there are bread lines. You have bread lines in a country that was exporting wheat. Has so much wheat. It has stocks and reserves and can afford to export it to Italy and elsewhere. There are bread lines. Can you believe that? This is what sanctions does. This is what war does, right? So there were no more power cuts in Syria. You know, I remember that in 2010, 2011, no more power cuts in Damascus. And at least, you know, I'm saying anecdotally. And now you get 2 hours, 4 hours of power a day because of sanctions, because of the war, you know, a multitude of reasons. What is the point of all this? Just disgusting destruction, really. And so this is why we call people like Hillary Clinton a real war criminal, you know? They destroy nations. They destroy nations and set them back. Decades. These are really, it's beyond war crime. It's really a crime against humanity what they do. It's horrific. Colin says, Mr. Habibi, guess what? I started my own channel on Friday. Hope to have you on at some point in the future. It's good to see you too, Habibi. I was just mentioning you earlier. I said that I saw you started a new one. I'd love to do that. We need to link up, and I think that's amazing, really, because you know, we need more people doing leftist media, especially anti-imperialist stuff, and I really think it's great what you're doing. I'm really proud of you, honestly. And I saw you wanted to have a doctor on to talk about the healthcare system, and I can't remember where the doctor was from. You'll have to excuse me, but you wanted to compare it to the US, I believe, right? So I need to watch that too. Did you already have them on, or is that still scheduled for after? Because that's something, again, that's really important. You know, I think it's a much needed perspective. People in America, they don't understand, like, they're just so used to this predatory healthcare system in the US. They don't understand that other things are possible, that other countries have something that works much better. And, you know, these other countries have far less resources. The US is, you know, technically speaking, at least, the most, the richest country. There's a lot of debt as well, but it's the richest country. It has a lot of resources to make these things happen, and they don't. So it's really eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people to have that kind of perspective, especially from healthcare workers. So that's very important. And it's really good to see you and to hear from you. Véro says, personne dans mon fichu pays m'appelle Sarkozy un criminel de guerre. J'ai l'impression d'être seul, merde. Ah bah oui, hein, c'est... Criminel de guerre, comme j'ai dit, c'est un peu... C'est pas assez, franchement. C'est des crimes contre l'humanité, tout ça. Comme il détruit ces pays. Et la Libye, c'est vraiment un exemple d'un pays indépendant qu'ils ont niqué de A à Z. You know, Libya had independence in oil. I mean, which was kind of obvious. I didn't know I had to mention that, but yes, Libya has a lot of oil, and so it was independent in water, in oil. It had gold. You can't do that. That's a no-no. You need to be under the umbrella of Western, Western countries. Otherwise, they come and get you. Even if you trade, like you have Iran and Venezuela, or Iran and Syria, Iran and Lebanon, trading in oil, fuel for gold, whatever. Basic trade, like you have two sovereign countries trading. Do you know what they call that in the media? They say they're illicit shipments of fuel. What do you mean illicit? What, like Venezuela and Iran, they need permission to trade with each other? Permission from who? Yeah, this is the colonial way of speaking. This is the colonial mentality, you know? So, I'm not joking. Like, I saw that earlier on Twitter. You know this. Like, we always talk about this. They always say that Iran is, like, sending illegal shipments. What do you mean illegal shipments of oil? The U.S. sanctions are illegal, not the fucking shipments. Like, they just turn the whole world upside down. And people have no clue. You know, the average person who picks up a newspaper, or if they have time to even listen to the news, you know, they just hear this shit from some talking head telling them that, Iran, Syria, they're violating U.S. sanctions. Like, to them, they think U.S. sanctions are universal law. Like, everyone, no. U.S. sanctions are illegal. I'm not saying that, like, you know, I'm not just saying that they're actually illegal under international law. They have a nice fancy name for it in the UN. What was it against? Unilateral coercive measures or something. It's a long ass name. They're illegal is my point. But yeah. So Neil, thank you so much for your donation on Venmo. He wants a Brzezinski pinata. Well, once I open the polls, this is going to be very funny for you guys to start. You know, I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to do a thread, and I'll ask you, who would you like to be in the poll? So we'll have a preliminary poll, you know, like kind of filter out the candidates. It'll be a primary, and then we'll have the final, you know, the actual poll. That'll be funny, you know. That'll be funny. Again, I'm going to vote for, you know, Henry Kissinger. Am I allowed to vote in the pinata thing? So I should be. Anyway. Thank you guys so much. You know, I really want to stay here all night, but I'll keep more of what I have to say for next time, right? And of course, everything is going to be up, so don't worry. You can rewind, you can rewatch. It's no problem. Actually, you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna go to the toilet, and I'll be right back. And I want to say something else, which is very important, which needs discussing. Okay, so we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We're back, everybody. So, something else that I wanted to add, which again, we've talked about extensively before, but nevertheless. I think you should be able to see me now. Yes. So, I missed the 7-hour live streams. That was fun. So, what did I want to I talk about? Yes, I remember. AUKUS. AUKUS. This is a very interesting topic. And we talked about how Australia is going to receive these nuclear-powered submarines, which, again, nuclear-powered submarines are not nuclear-armed submarines. Nevertheless, Australia won't receive them, actually, for quite a while. So I've heard the year 2040 floated around. You know, these things take time to build. The point here is that in exchange for these nuclear-powered submarines from the Americans and British, which will only arrive in a decade or two, already the United States gets to benefit greatly from this. Okay, so you really have to understand what Australia is in the lens, of American world politics. So Australia is a giant spy station and unsinkable aircraft carrier for the Americans. And, I know that sounds a bit like hyperbole, but it's really how they view it. It's more of a vassal state than, a sovereign country. So I'm just going to pull up a map for you so you can see the military bases in Australia. I think there are about 7, or at least the ones that are publicly, semi-publicly disclosed. But the most important one is at Pine Gap, right? So here, how about this? Lovely. So you can see the various facilities here. And you can see that they also list training bases, right? A thing to note about training bases, which is very important, is that in Australia, the United States doesn't only have its own bases, it also has access to training facilities that belong to the Australian Defence Forces, right? Which is extraordinary, right? So they can just use those as well. They have access to those. They also have access to ports in Darwin, Fremantle, and Royal Australian Air Force airfields. So they not only have their own facilities, but they actually share facilities that belong to the Australian Defence Forces. And the star, literally, it's a star on the map, is Pine Gap, which is right in the middle of Australia in the desert. It's near a place called Alice Springs. Pine Gap is very controversial, always has been for many decades, right? It's a giant spy station. It's So it's not an air base or something. It's just, it's really the crown jewel. It's the most important of all these military installations. Because with Pine Gap, the United States is able to conduct signal intelligence, right? So signal intelligence, SIGINT, is an abbreviation for really what is a core pillar of military and intelligence activities. It's collecting data, right? From radio signals, from, telex cables, you name it, right? It's gathering data. And then, of course, they sift through it. But, with Pine Gap, this is such a massive spy station that they're able to use this for all of the Indo-Pacific. And they also do other things with it. It's also used, for example, in Iraq. When they're bombing Iraq, the coordinates are coming in from Pine Gap, for example. When they're piloting drones in Afghanistan, Pine Gap is involved in all of these activities. Not just in collecting intelligence, but in fighting, or fighting. It's not fighting a war. It's it's an occupation, but it's participating in these attacks, right? So this is very important to understand. And so, like I said, Australia is really just a giant spy station for the Americans. In World War II, again, the term unsinkable aircraft carrier is quite succinct and accurate. And Peter Dutton, the defense minister, the Australian defense minister, what did he say recently at a press conference with the Americans? He said that as part of AUKUS, as part of this new trilateral agreement, there will be greater air cooperation through rotational deployments of all types of U.S. aircraft. So again, Americans, they'll be able to park, they'll be able to fly, to, use all their aircraft in Australia. And this is extraordinary. And what I'd like to know is regarding the B-52s, because Australia, has sworn off of nuclear, right? And it doesn't have nuclear weapons, but the Americans do have nuclear weapons. So does that mean that they're going to park nuclear-armed B-52s in Australian airfields? What does this mean, right? And I can honestly tell you, if tomorrow morning they came out and said, no way the Americans will have anything nuclear-armed stationed in Australia, would you really believe them? Would you really believe them? So the ports, that's another thing, right? They have access to these ports. How do you know that the Americans aren't servicing or stationing or, using nuclear-armed submarines, American nuclear-armed submarines, in Australian ports? No clue, right? Even if the Australians knew about it, they wouldn't tell because, it would cause a scandal. And as we again, an important parenthesis here is that Australia is getting nuclear-powered submarines as opposed to diesel-powered, right? And Australia is allowed to do that as a signatory of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, right? So there's kind of, they call it a loophole, I guess, that, you're not allowed to have nuclear weapons because you signed a treaty which is against proliferation of nuclear weapons, but you can have naval applications. So you can build ships that have that run on nuclear power. You're allowed to do that. Another exception is a civilian nuclear program, so like what Iran has, right? Any country that signs the NPT has the right to a civilian nuclear program and naval use. And again, it was a very interesting double standard, which we talked about before, because despite the fact that Iran has the right to a civilian nuclear program and Australia has the right to use nuclear technology in a naval application, there's nowhere near the same amount of outrage regarding Iran as there is with Australia, even though Australia will get highly enriched uranium. So we're talking about 90% enriched uranium. Iran only just recently got to 60%, right? And if America hadn't broken the nuclear deal, if Trump hadn't left the JCPOA, Iran would still be at 3.67%. That was the limit outlined in the JCPOA, and Iran always stuck by it. It's not me saying that. It's the IAEA nuclear inspectors who verified this. They have 24/7 cameras in all of the nuclear facilities. They can go anywhere they like. They can sweep any nuclear facility in Iran, and they verified this. So you can see this double standard, right? In any case, you really have to understand what Australia means for the Americans. They don't view Australia as a sovereign country. They don't view it as an ally. They call it an ally, but it's really a colony. And the British still view it as a colony too, in many ways. And if there is a possible future confrontation with China, I hope there isn't. But if there is, the Americans, they're not going to bend over backwards to save Australia. I think Australia is a means for them to distance themselves from any confrontations, because by surrounding China with military bases, much closer than Australia, by the way, right, and surrounding Iran with fleets of warships and military bases. America always tries to keep any confrontation outside its own territory, which, defense-wise is perhaps the best thing to do. But we're not talking about defense, are we? We're talking about offense. This is imperialism. It's colonization. It's aggression. And so, Australia, in their mind, is just like any other military base. Yes, it's a bit more special because it has Pine Gap there. But as a country, they don't view it as a country. And you really have to understand something, because there's an Australian prime minister who was couped because of this, right? You ever heard of Whitlam? This fellow over here? They got rid of him. And they got rid of him because he was starting to ask questions about Pine Gap. They got rid of him because he was starting to ask questions about the role that the United States is playing in Australian politics, and why they're using Australia for their endeavors. You must remember that Australia has been in virtually all recent conflicts that America has been involved in, right? So World War II, of course, under the British, and then, of course, in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Although Iraq, I think it's more in a special forces capability. So don't take my word for it on Iraq, but definitely in Afghanistan, definitely in Vietnam, and it's like a given that of course Australia is going to come along with what America does, just like Britain does, right? In many ways, and so they didn't like this guy. They got rid of him. They couped him. The I think it was the Attorney General who sacked him, right? And his name was Kerr, I believe, right? Yeah, Sir John Kerr. And so there's well, I wouldn't call him a whistleblower, but Christopher John Boyce, he sold secrets to the Soviets, right? So he was working with the CIA, and he would go to, well, he had a friend also with him who would go to the Soviet embassy in Mexico City, and he would sell secrets to the Soviets. And he realized, one of the things that he talks about is that the United States is interfering in Australia's politics, like to a degree you would not believe. They're messing with unions, they're influencing elections, and they called the Attorney General, which I just mentioned to you, our man Kerr. His name is Sir John Kerr. They said he's our man. That's what the CIA called him. And so, Whitlam, he starts poking around, asking too many questions. They got the Attorney General to fire him. And so it's really important to understand that Australia doesn't just serve a military application for the Americans, but, they're interfering in it like they do with any other country, which is wrong regardless. Like, just because they're doing it to one of their allies doesn't mean it's okay to do it to a non-allied country, obviously. But what Christopher John Boyce said, the guy who was selling secrets to the Soviets, he said that if the Americans, if they're doing that to one of their own allies, what are they doing to other countries? I think that really puts things into perspective. And what's crucial to understand is this didn't stop. If anything, it's gotten worse. You can just see now with AUKUS, it's getting worse, right? Australia is getting some shitty submarines that will probably be old by the time they're built, and which will only arrive in 10, 20 years. But the Americans, they kicked the French out of the picture. They've made money for the military-industrial complex, and they've strengthened their influence in the Indo-Pacific and over Australia. Win, win, win for the Americans, right? So this is really crucial to understand. It's so much bigger than some bullshit in the media, like how, oh yeah, this is strengthening our defensive ties. No. There's a whole history of CIA meddling, of American meddling inside Australia, not to mention what the British did, right? I mean, the relationship with the UK. So Australia is really a vassal state, a colony to both the UK and the US. But you have to understand the recent history, because we're talking about this is just the last few decades, and it's still continuing, right? It's not something that just started. You really have to understand that Australia has no sovereignty, and AUKUS is just making that worse. This is completely beneficial for the United States, and Australia gets nothing, absolutely nothing out of this. I mean, if anything, it's actually putting Australia in danger, because, if the Americans treat it like a base, and they are, and they attack China, I mean, China is, my point is that they might put Australia in harm's way, and they are by doing this, which is really crappy for the Australians, right? And of course, everyone else who has military bases occupying their soil. And I even heard that there's a room in Pine Gap where even the Australians couldn't go in. Can you imagine that? We're not talking about some embassy, which you could argue, fine, it's an embassy. We're talking about an installation in Australia, a military installation, which is supposed to be shared between the UK, I'm getting my empires mixed up, between the US and the Australians. And half the employees, for example, at Pine Gap are Americans, right? And apparently there was a room where even the Australians weren't allowed in, which is incredible, right? How it just gives you an idea of who's running the show. It's extraordinary. So, yeah, I really think it's important to understand the relationship, the subordination, and I mean, Joe Biden couldn't even remember Morrison's name. Jeez, that is so emblematic of what's going on. Really, so emblematic. It's shameful, honestly. So the only party benefiting from this is America. That's really it. And like I said, it's important to put it into context, because then it makes even more sense, and you can grasp the bigger picture perhaps a lot better. And of course, just as a last note, Julian Assange, who's an Australian citizen, why do you think that Maurice Payne, the foreign minister, or Scott Morrison, the prime minister, why do you think they refused to comment on Julian Assange's case? This is one of the reasons, because they know that the United States wants to get Assange. So, whether they want to or they don't, it's really not up to them. They have there's no way that they're going to, step on the United States or Uncle Sam's toes. Uncle Sam is running the show here. And if they want to get Julian Assange, the Australians are not going to say anything, because the Australian government is controlled by the US. Do you understand? So, of course, it's not only that, because Australia, just politically speaking, it's one of the Five Eyes, along with Canada, New Zealand, the UK, the US, looking at its foreign policy, which is very much directed by Whitehall and Washington, D.C. There are other reasons why they don't even like what Julian Assange did. And they might have personal agreements. But you must understand that there is a real, U.S. influence in how Australia reacts to this, or doesn't react to it, rather. So that's important to understand. And it's part of this larger picture. And so when you put it into context, it really makes a lot more sense. Right. Robin says the UK gets nothing. Biden doesn't even want to talk trade with them. So I think you're right. I think the UK is not even going to get one of its submarines picked, honestly. I think that the submarines that Australia will get will likely be American built, and the UK is, just along for the ride. The British, after Brexit, just look at the state of the UK right now. They're out of the European Union. They have no empire, and so this offers some sort of nostalgia. And so, it's I spoke to Professor Patience, and he said that it's probably the Americans going to get their submarines built. I agree. Britain, it's just some colonial adventure. Anyway, thank you guys very much for all your support. And I'm just going to put up the donation screen here. All the segments will be up as well very soon. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I'm just checking if you guys sent any questions or comments so that I can read them to you. Oh, I see actually Nazli sent something on PayPal, and she said, thanks for all your hard work. Thank you. I hope you're still on here, because I didn't see the note before. So thank you very much. And if you guys have any questions or comments, you can send them on Venmo or CashApp or PayPal, or, do a super chat, whatever. All the links are below. I'm very grateful for you tuning in. Thanks so much. And I hope you found the program to your liking. So, yeah. I'll also leave the Patreon thing up. In any case, thank you guys very much. I'll see you next time. Take care. مع السلامة. Bye-bye.